One day, doors opened all over the world, and through them, countless monsters from another dimension invaded the Earth, causing a massive disaster. However, along with them, beings who could suppress them with pure power emerged. These beings were called saints and began to get involved in this world, safeguarding its inhabitants. Using their powers, they subdued a large part of the monsters. Since that day, even ordinary people started showing potential to become a saint, gaining a lifespan comparable to that of the monsters. This marked the beginning of a world where anyone could wield immense power. The source of this power was determined by the potential one had to become a saint, and could be classified into three categories. Firstly, there was the celestial physique, which allowed its user to manipulate the sky and the earth. The second one allowed its owners to control the five elements: fire, water, earth, wood, and metal, and was known as the mundane physique. The third one enabled its user to manipulate the energy of the sun and the moon, yin and yang, and was known as the human physique. Lastly, there was a physique that did not fit into any of the three categories. It was far beyond the comprehension of others. This physique allowed its users to demonstrate immense power and superhuman abilities. It was neither celestial nor mundane. Instead, it was a disaster that could not be categorized along with the others. The beings possessing it were considered chaos itself. In this world where the saints were at the forefront, and were even regarded as rulers, a person appeared who shocked everyone with the enormous potential of their irregular physique, with abilities that allowed them to consume chemical products and unleash their potential. This disaster wielded the power of an irregular Hanjul. They used their powers to challenge the system and subdue the saints who had become intoxicated with power. The story begins with Hanjul working while some of their colleagues feel tired due to the exhausting work. They bid farewell to them, and as they walk, their colleagues talk about how energetic Hanjul is at work, never getting tired. They wonder if Hanjul has some kind of invigorating medicine, as they have seen them eating vitamins and can't fathom how they could attain so much power. On the other hand, Honduras strolls through the streets calmly, thinking to themselves that the vitamins they have consumed are the best for fatigue, as by enhancing their effects through devouring them, they can maximize their potential. They discovered the power of their special attribute during their days in the military when they consumed some supplements given to them by a comrade. Since then, even after a hard day's work, their fatigue disappears, and the supplements grant them a clear mind. As Hanjul walks through the streets, a girl approaches them. Seeing her, Hanjul feels glad, but it turns out she belongs to a cult, which Angela doesn't like, so they run away. While doing so, they recall their father, who used to be a stable person, but decided one day to create a medicine to become a saint. After leaving those words as their legacy, the father resigned from their job and moved to their parents' house in the countryside. They consumed a mixture of medicines and other ingredients, which led them to be hospitalized several times until they passed away one day, and the medicine never worked. This happened 20 years ago, when Julia was just 2 years old. We return to the present, and Hanjul does some shopping while still thinking about their father. Suddenly, a large circle appears in the sky, surprising people, and they take photos. But Hanjul can only think that it must be something dangerous. A massive earthquake shakes the earth and everyone tries to seek shelter, but the monsters won't allow it. Hanjul feels helpless at that moment, but their ability activates, using nutrients from caffeine and sugar to gain great power. Increasing their reflexes, they manage to dodge a monster's attack, but don't fully understand what is happening. After pondering a bit, they realize they might have absorbed the properties of the coffee. Although they contemplate fleeing, witnessing people being slaughtered, Hanjul decides to confront the monsters, and the battle begins. Just when they are about to defeat them, the true boss makes an appearance, revealing a monstrous appearance. Hanjul manages to intimidate it, but the orc boss is imposing. One of the survivors asks for Hanjul help, who consumes a cigarette, granting them enormous dexterity, and with just one kick they send the boss outside the store. As they walk around smoking their cigarette, the adrenaline creation activates and the second round starts. Even though Hanjul is losing the effect of the caffeine, they endure the boss's blow. Unfortunately, they crash into a supermarket, destroying everything. The orc boss appears, displaying its imposing presence. Meanwhile, people around them try to escape at all costs from the disaster, but the monsters won't let them. This fact makes Hanjul feel powerless, as they don't have enough energy to continue fighting. To suddenly fight, a person descends from the heavens and, using a talisman, manages to subdue the monsters, generating a massive explosion of energy that disintegrates them instantly. This event surprises Hanjul. The girl approaches him and admires that he managed to kill some monsters without any training. She asks him who he is. He tells her that she will have to measure his potential. She takes his hand and using her power registers him. Upon doing this, she notices that he is neither celestial nor mundane, but he doesn't seem to be human either. He must be an irregular. She thinks to herself that even though the person in front of her may have been chosen, she cannot allow someone with such power to live because it could lead to disaster. As she is about to kill him, he thanks her for the help. After thinking for a while, she uses a pill that causes him terrible pain and tells him it is a medicine to seal his internal energy. She is doing this to save his life since an irregular cannot wander the world as if nothing happened. Moreover, his own powers could ruin his life, so it would be better for him to remain that way. She asked him not to hate her for this decision, and departs saying that if fate wills it, they will meet again. As she leaves, he says he doesn't know what an irregular is, and what that has to do with him. He tries to get up slowly and step by step walks to the pharmacy, saying that if he didn't have his powers, he would probably be dead. That's why he will use them to survive. Back home, he consumes a large amount of hangover drinks, allowing him to return to his previous state and neutralize the effects of the pill, saving himself from living a miserable life. A warning arrives on his cell phone. The monsters are attacking the city. After seeing the message, he downloads an app that alerts him about everything that will happen within his area. Upon registering, a menu appears that scans his physical condition. He starts trembling, and the scanning completes. By some twist of fate, he is not classified as an irregular. The blue energy of the void, a material that represents trees and sometimes contains water within its core, is considered one of the best medicines in the world. The test results are about to be shown. This blue energy of the void is one of the ingredients of the pill he took, allowing him to absorb its power. As the hangover drinks counteracted the poison, he could absorb it safely. Something begins to emerge inside his body, and energy is causing him a high fever. He searches for a comfortable way to control it. Afterward, he checks his cell phone and his physical condition is displayed. He possesses a mundane physique. Upon careful consideration, he concludes that perhaps it was the effects of the pill that allowed him to obtain this classification. It's a relief that he was not classified as an irregular, as he might have died. A message from the president appears stating that he will speak the truth for everyone's safety. 10,000 years ago, the world was a spectacular place where monsters roamed and ruled the earth. Even beings from other dimensions came to their world. At that time, humans were nothing more than sacrifices, but amidst the chaos, the chosen ones with spiritual physiques appeared, possessing a power not everyone had, bringing glory to the world. The saints sacrificed themselves to close the gates of heaven, allowing all humans to prosper. They were remembered as myths and legends, passed down through generations and continue to protect the gate as humanity progresses. This was the case until now. Another window appears and Junjian searches for skills suitable for his attitudes. Multiple signs appear to initiate. He must locate power in 3 core zones: upper core, middle core, and lower core. After getting into the proper position, he must practice in an organized way to feel the heat in those areas. Once power concentrates in those 3 points, he will have the foundation for his training. After this, he begins saying that it is quite easy. And even though a spiritual body takes time to feel energy, and its 3 points, some people with talent only take months or a few years to reach a state of enlightenment. Hanjul has taken the first step to becoming a saint. Upon waking up, he notices that a long time has passed as plants have grown around him. By checking the message on the screen, he confirms that 100 days have passed. After this, he takes a bath, and while drying himself, he examines his body and is surprised to find no wounds. What's even more strange is that he doesn't feel hungry. He has lost weight and gained muscle. He looks at his cell phone and realizes the situation he is in. When he looks outside, he sees a massive barrier. It seems to be a dome isolating the city from the outside. They are often used when there are monsters in many places. So it's possible that he was left behind because he couldn't evacuate. Suddenly he feels an earthquake, but when he looks out the window, he sees the true reality. Monsters are approaching in large numbers, so he is about to leave that place. He tries to enter the application to see what is happening. Apparently, He slept for 100 days because the technique he used with a lotus position is special. The menu opens, but without internet, he cannot access it, although he can see his information and the skills he was granted. One of them is called Windy Steps, which allows him to move at an enormous speed by concentrating magic in his feet. The others are called Carrying the Weight, which increases his strength, and Twisted Light, but he cannot use them at the moment since monsters are on the roof, and they could see him and be attracted to him. Apparently, to level up, he must acquire stars. The more experience he gains, the better it will be for his skills to increase. But what's most surprising is that it takes 10 years per star. This fact makes him sad, since he must practice almost his entire life just to become stronger. At this rate, it would take him a long time. He starts checking how many stars he has at the moment, but in doing so he attracts a monster, so he looks for a way to confront it. The monster doesn't give him time and attacks him, but he uses the skill he found before enchantment, planting sprouts. This allows him to absorb the enemy's life force and use all the nutrients they had, greatly increasing his power. After meditating for a while, he realizes that a tremendous amount of power is entering his body, and this may lead to a rapid increase in his strength. Upon inspecting the monster closely, he notices some special sprouts on its body, and keeps them since they seem to be unique. He gathers some things and walks through the hallway, saying that he can only use his absorption ability once on his enemies, but it is very convenient, since if given time, he could kill them. Although it's not a great method to face multiple opponents, it will serve him well in a one-on-one battle. As he has to wait for the rescue team to return, he must use his abilities to stay safe. Suddenly, a massive beast jumps and tries to attack him, but he manages to stop it using an energy coating, and with a powerful punch makes it retreat. He attempts to escape, but it won't be that easy. If he wants to survive, he'll have to fight. He reaches the rooftop and uses his third ability, Twisted Light, to emit a very bright energy and hide while waiting for the rescue team. Apparently, a Daoist is in the area. The Daoist asks why he's in a place like this without any talismans or the ability to fly. To this, Hanjul responds that he had them but they vanished. The Daoist tells him to take his hand to get out of there, but Angela says there is a huge beast behind him. Without much effort, using his fire pearls, the Daoist kills the beast and tells Hanjul that it's time to leave. While they head to a safe zone, the Daoist asks who he is to be in a forbidden area, and if he doesn't value his life. Hanyl thanks him for saving him and explains that he has been trapped for 100 days. Checking his phone, he notices that his mother and relatives are okay, and he's happy about that. But many things have changed, and he wonders how strong he must become now. They arrive at a building and he talks to his family, telling them he was lost for a while, but they manage to rescue him. Since they have to investigate, he'll talk to them later. Not far from there, the guard in the room asks if he finished his call. He responds that he did, thinking that it's good that his family is safe. Someone enters the room. It's one of the disciples who follows the orders of the unit they are in. He asks the guard to leave and intimidate him to comply with his orders. Now alone with Anjali, he asks if he reached the Ascendant's rank before the heavenly gate opened. Anjali says he did not. Showdown angrily tells him that he thinks he's worthy of waking his master and explains that there are 9 ranks. Saint's Descendants first rank and the other stem from that high second rank, Great third rank Mystic, 4th rank Celestial, 5th rank Glorious, 6th rank Deity, 7th rank Spiritual, 8th rank Mundane, and the maximum rank. Most disciples are not considered saints, but he was recognized by his characteristics as an ascended 1st rank. Age, ethnicity, none of that matters. Whoever accumulates the most training as a disciple and becomes the strongest will rule, but they have to give everything to serve their seniors, as that is the established rule. Hanjul asks about his master's rank. Choni grabs him by the neck and tells him that those born with a spiritual physique it must live under the care of their ancestors, as there is no possibility. If he says that again, he'll have trouble. Hanjul reproaches him for following him just because he thinks he has a cool way of speaking. Choni is about to hit him, but stops when he sees his status window, as Hanjul seems to be 1 rank above him. Hanjul tells him that since he has to help his seniors, he'll have to give his all from now on. The scene changes, and now we see the Daoists talking to his disciple. He scolds him for everything he's been telling him, and even more so for bowing his head in front of a brat like that child without even asking for an apology. He tells him that his rank was lower than that of his enemy, so it's possible he's an irregular. The angry Taoist tells him to stop talking nonsense as he should have been born with a mundane body, but his nature is more inclined towards trees. The disciple asks if that has to do with his cultivation speed, to which the Taoist responds that he doesn't know. Previously, it was difficult for a human to possess that power. Humans faced elements water and fire. Although these elements are common, the relationship between a tree and a human is relatively incompatible. The Taoist says that the report of help is a rare case, so he shouldn't say anything, and gives him a pill to stabilize his power, while thinking to himself that it's fascinating that such a young boy possesses such power. Elsewhere in the Hanjul building, a newly investigates his physique. According to the government, there is no person with an irregular physique, and physical evaluations are conducted all over the country. Anyone with an irregular physique is isolated. Although there are 3 types of established physiques, an unpredictable type can also appear. In previous decades, the saints were disappearing, and the monsters tried to interfere with the world. To prevent this, the saints banished them along with the irregulars, leaving behind multiple stories of their exploits. Among them are the stories of John Hilton and Jimbachi, who were famous irregulars. It is assumed that Hanjul was classified as mundane due to his power, and as long as they don't know how long the chemical power of substances lasts, it's okay. Hanjul searches for substances with a similar effect to the pill he took. After searching a bit, he finds the seeds he collected previously after fighting a beast in the department, but apparently there are no photos of them sprouting. After further investigation, he learns that it's called the purgatory grass, a herb that grows naturally in the river Styx. If the seeds are consumed raw, they make a person feel sick. But just after sprouting, they are considered medicine possessing yin energy. The conditions for their germination are quite strict, making them extremely difficult to obtain in that state. But when Hanjul is lucky as the seeds he has sprouted due to his powers, so he sets out to experiment with those that didn't sprout. Using the technique of breathing in the sunlight winds, he manages to make them sprout and excitedly goes to look for his disciple. But he is in another place outside the Hanjul building. He reaches a distant site and, using his power, manages to grow a tree. Although he had to sacrifice 2 hours of his time, he closely examines it while thinking to himself that the breathing technique can exchange energy with everything around it, giving him the power to make plants grow. At this rate, if he continues like this, he won't have problems living as an irregular. By consuming the sprouts of the purgatory grass, a large amount of energy enters his body. The heat it generates is similar to the vacuum technique, and absorption takes place, albeit with a few issues. He doesn't know the reason for this, but after trial and error, he finds a way to channel the power in a way that benefits him greatly. Looking back on his memories, he realizes that these seeds possess even power, as the absorption method is similar to that of the tree. But he can't find a technique that uses yon power, as mixing them may put him in danger, as it did before. We return to the moment when his little experiment was successful. He plucks a message from his cell phone, alerting him of a level to disaster. The king dragon of the West Sea is loose and people run to seek refuge. Hanyl follows closely outside the building. Something is lurking. Worms are scattered everywhere. Hanjul thinks to himself that this is something strange. A person screams for help, and behind her is the king dragon of the sea, a monstrous, winged beast of massive size. He stares at it intently, while the girl is tortured and pleads for help. The people around only care about themselves, but Hanjul is not like them. With a cigarette in the tree in hand, he unleashes his power to the fullest and launches into battle. He won't let a person die like this, so he will destroy the beast. He slams it against a wall, but he doesn't understand how he has become so strong. He remembers the purgatory grass he had used before and thinks that it might be the cause of his power. But after analyzing the city situation, he notices that it's the rain that's falling and it's connected to the tears of the king dragon of the sea. With this, he gains a new power called chemicals of the dragon. This water is favorable for him because just like it makes trees grow and become stronger, it amplifies his wood element energy. With this new ability, he refines an artifact by concentrating an enormous amount of power into the tree and manages to create the dragon-slaying exorcist sword. Armed with it, he prepares to confront the beast, which is not willing to back down. Jan takes a defensive position and counters its attacks, but the battle is far from easy, and the barrier he creates to stop the beast won't hold for long. Using a significant amount of his energy to withstand the attacks, he notices an opening and strikes back. After inspecting the sword, he sees that it remains unscathed, and it seems the Sea Dragon King has set his sights on it. In its final attempt to attack the girl, the Sea Dragon King is stopped by Hanjul, who knocks it back and rescues her. The Sea Dragon King is not willing to let this stand and it roars fiercely, trying to use its claws to attack. Hanjul creates a shield, protects the girl and tries to counter the attack, but he ends up crashing into a wall, barely able to move. Utilizing the sword and the fact that his bones are intact, he tries to get up. With the woman safe in the refuge, he can now focus on the battle. The Sea Dragon King takes flight, staring down at him, and he wonders how such a large beast can fly. But there's no time to ponder that he can't retreat to the refuge as chemicals are running out and he's getting weaker. He could use his ability to plant sprouts, but it's difficult against flying enemies. Thus he decides to go all out in the battle, using his ace in the hole, the dragon-slaying exorcist sword, which possesses both plant and sword attributes. However, this energy exchange takes time to grow strong enough. Using the falling dragon tears, he increases the technique's power, stores energy in the sword, and focuses on what's to come. Employing the martial art of lightning strikes from the sunlight winds, he aims to finish off the beast. The onlookers record the scene of this magnificent being, who defies the authorities and defeated a god's pet. Hanjul. Even if someone were to die by the Sea Dragon King, the authorities wouldn't intervene. Nonetheless, without caring about all that, he saves the girl without hesitation, becoming a hero. Someone intervenes and appears angry, questioning if he knows what he has done, killing the young lady's bird. It is the fire doused who scolds hundreds severely, saying that it's not enough for him to die. The doused takes him away, and the widely shared video causes people to condemn the doused actions. Putting a beast above human lives. On top of a large building, we see a lady who turns out to be younger. She asks her subordinate if the person who killed her pet is dead, and the subordinate says that the doused burned him and that they have subdued him for now. However, Youngbo is angry, saying that they are underestimating her, and sends her subordinate to tell the humans that if they don't want to suffer her wrath, they must finish them off. But this won't be possible, as Hanjul's recording has become quite popular, and if she were to show hostility towards him, various factions would be dissatisfied with her actions. Manhwa finds it unfunny, mentioning that the rulers seem to fear such things. She asks her subordinate if she has found a way to calm her anger, and the subordinate says they have prepared a tribute to maintain her reputation, which satisfies Young-Yul. She notes that it might rain since the Sea Dragon King has conned at sadness. The one who died wasn't the original Sea Dragon King, but a distant relative with qualifications even lower than an illegitimate son. According to her thoughts, the true one should be satisfied with the rain ritual. However, the most crucial thing at the moment is the object she obtained, a fruit called a fantastic treasure even among deities. Its flowers bloom only once every 1,000 years, and it takes at least 3,000 years for a fruit to grow. This is the mystical tree that grows solely in a Queen of the West's orchard, the tree of immortal peaches. After the Queen Mother of the West sacrificed herself to close the gates of heaven, they disappeared as well. If she could make them bloom again, her name would replace the Queen's. We shift the perspective, and now we see Hanjul walking the streets while recalling what he was told after awakening. Apparently, he made all the gods look like bad people. Even though his sword was confiscated, he found a wooden block in the beast that was apparently carrying him. Feeling life within it, he channeled his power, generating a small sapling, which he set out to care for no matter what. A year has passed since that incident, and new problems have arisen in the news. They talk about a nauseating smell spreading throughout the city, and the contaminated water that the government is trying to purify. People complain about this problem, saying that the issue is not just purify the water, but also dealing with what has been lurking in the Han River for a month. When the energy of the heavens was completely chaotic, a monster hid in the Han River. This monster was called the 1,000-year snake-headed fish. After crossing from the world of monsters to the human world's river, it became powerful enough to claim itself as a god, proclaiming to be the lord of the Han River. It declared that no one could use the water of his river until they fulfilled its demands. Here, two new characters are introduced. The first is Jeongyo, a disciple of the mountain, one of the 8 sacred mountains of the Korean peninsula, and a disciple of the celestial king Nutra. The second character is Somin, the youngest disciple of the 8 sacred mountains of the Korean peninsula, and a disciple of the immortal Take, the guardian Pai 2. It seems they are discussing the situation happening in the Han River. John Gyo says it is not appropriate to gather together as they cannot discuss or resolve this problem, since it depends on the will of the gods. So she should act as if everything is fine until mortals face serious problems and protest silently. She can't believe what she's hearing and asks if that's what her master taught her. Apparently, 10,000 citizens have contracted infectious diseases or suffered food poisoning, and that's why they have to solve the problem. John Joe asks if she can kill the Lord of the Han River, but she doesn't respond. He mentions that just a few days ago, many people tried to defeat the monster, but for senior mystical immortals encountered problems with it, and apparently, the people in the room are not even at the level of those immortals, so he asks if she wants them to work together diligently to move toward the mouth of that fish. Here, they comment on the real reason it is difficult to deal with an individual like the Lord of the Han River. He possesses techniques of earth and water, which is challenging to achieve even among humans. The only way they could defeat him is if an immortal with high proficiency in earth forces him out by force, or if someone of higher rank can both elements like the tree, where to face him. We return to the present and see Hanjul running calmly through the forest. She tries to keep up using all her abilities, but it's not easy. She can't even catch up. Even if she uses a talisman, she can't believe what's happening. When he approaches and says he didn't mean to escape, he was just surprised that she followed him. She notices the sweat on his body, concluding that he must have relied on his physical strength. She throws her phone at him to measure his abilities. But what's even stranger is that he still possesses the same information as before, indicating he remains a high-grade immortal. She talks to him about the current situation, and Hanjul asks if she intends to use her wood power to kill the Lord of the Han River. But for him, the most important thing is to know if the other immortals want to kill that monster. In his view, they seem negligent. She explains that the seniors didn't take action because they wanted to see if their juniors could handle the task without relying on them. However, from his perspective, he can only see how thousands of people are suffering because the seniors are waiting for the juniors to do the job. He asks if, with their cooperation, his sanction will be lifted, and they will compensate him. And she asks him like this: with cooperation, will your sanction be lifted? And will they compensate you? She asks for his sword. Since it seemed that she felt he had it, she asks him how he knows, and he tells her that he can interact with the trees around him, and that is part of his cultivation technique. So she asks if he can take her out of the curfew. She tells him that there is no problem because this is an important matter that will attract everyone's attention, and no one will judge him for helping. Besides, she thinks to herself that the curfew was only established to punish him for killing Miss Yunhwa's bird, and as the incident has already forgotten, he probably won't have any problems resolving it, especially since she is the disciple of the immortal Take. That's why she is trying to convince him no matter what. At the river, she and some people who seem to be the guards of the place talk about the monster, and she tells them that she is there to finish it. On the other hand, Hanyul carefully looks at the river and takes out some items from his bag that he prepared for the battle. These items seem to be water hyacinths, a plant for purify the water. The Lord of the River, Hannah, appears, and Hank is ready to hunt him. The Lord of the River, Yan, who calls himself a god, tells him he has to obey and create some whirlpools. He manages to dodge them, arrives in front of him, and using some of his skills, he attacks him with darts. The battle becomes increasingly intense, and the Lord of the River gets angry. Without sound, he can't believe how Hanjul uses his abilities, but he says that he won't be able to win. However, Hanjul proved otherwise. The Lord of the River Han believes he can see through all his tricks. He manages to hit him with his tail while falling. Hansu picks up his bag, and some seeds fall in bloom. He manages to use them as platforms, takes out another dart, and attacks him directly. The Lord of the River Hand says that what he used must be the tree that was hit by lightning, but it's just a simple toe that couldn't destroy his body. Hanjul tells him that she put her heart into that toe, and after saying this, he activates the thunder and lightning dart, a skill he completed after reaching the 10th star of the sunlight. Without sound, he can't believe what he is seeing. The surroundings of the river are clean, and it smells like a barbecue. Hanjul enjoys the refreshing wind after having killed a self-proclaimed god, but he worries about drawing attention because he believes it will end up like the last time. Although there is a possibility that the gods are neglecting the Lord of the River Han for the sake of their disciples' trials and growth, not for the common people. After searching for a while inside the beast, he manages to find a core, although it's smaller than expected. It's the crystallization physaphers and hopes to become a dragon from this beast. And it's called without size from nothing. A person comes on stage and tries to capture Hanjul. This is the celestial king, noseless and salmon. He recalls the words of young Gigio, who told him to act as if nothing were happening since the immortals would only act when humans were in serious trouble. As they like to follow their own will, he thinks to himself that the fact that this character appeared so suddenly means they were considering the moment to quickly kill the Sea Dragon King. He tries to intervene to save Hanjul, but instead of helping her, the Celestial King scolds her for bringing a guide who trained for only a year and is not even a master for a mission like this. He tells her that even if he possesses the wood construction method, it's rare for a man without a master, who was trained only a year to use a technique good enough to kill the Lord of the River Han, which makes him doubt his identity. He tells her that if she opens her mouth, she will only bring shame to her master. On his part, Hanjul laughs at those words. Norcha asks him if he has lost his fear, but he tells him why he should have it if he hasn't done anything wrong. He knows that no, he doubts him, because he thinks he may have an irregular physique. But this is the second time someone has thought the same thing, and he already verified it with the application. Furthermore, he tells him that 3 minutes have passed since the fish died, and they appeared out of nowhere just as he killed it. It seems they were watching him. No, he was careful, as they appeared as soon as he killed it. They probably thought that if they finished off this fish, they could gain the public's favor. But since the stage they would use to elevate their disciple Nietzsche was ruined, they arrived. He can't tolerate what he's hearing, and he unleashes a significant amount of power. But he is amazed to see that Hanjul is fine. After his attack, the latter raises his sword towards him. On his part, Norcha asks if he knows what it means, and a terrible power emerges from his body. He asks him for his final words, and Hansu tells him that he won't die, so there's no point in saying them because Nusho won't be able to kill him. On his neutral side, he tells her that she is too arrogant, concentrates power in the palm of her hand, and then hurls it at him. Hanjul prepares to take the blow head on, and the other people present are very surprised to see that someone is protecting him. It turns out to be the elderly Pompek, the guardian of Miss Yunwa's garden, who claims to bring a request from her. He apologizes for interfering in her display of strength, but believes it was unjustified. Now Tu asks if Miss wants to take him away to vent her anger over the death of her bird a year ago. Pompek says that now he knows he is even stupid and will not avoid the fight, but both their reputations will be affected. And if there is no justification, she shouldn't mess with an elder. As he leaves, now Tu wonders why Miss Jumbo would call an elder to save Hanjul. The latter walks with him and asked if he knew he would appear, and that's why he was so brazen. Hanjul seems not to know anything, and Pompek gives him advice. Thinking he is outstanding, but unknown arrogance leads to destruction. He tells him he will keep it in mind, as his words echo in his mind. He recalls the incident from a year ago. His intentions were good, but not in the eyes of everyone. So he prepared himself more and more not to go through that again, and not be treated like a fool. After this, we hear some comments about the person who will be Miss Hanyl. Known as the Lady of Agriculture, the majority of elixirs are collected by her and she is involved in their sale and production. Miss Jumbo owns an enormous garden, not an ordinary one. Carefully selected elixirs grow there. The history of the gardens might be considered a rumor after seeing solid evidence. Hanyl decided to create a plan to attract her attention and reap huge benefits. One of Yumbo's subordinates confirms her name and asks about what she holds in her hand. The seeds of purgatory, which become valuable when they sprout. They were discovered while taking action against the black market to find out who the seller was and punish them. And Jolly immediately kneels down, asking for forgiveness for his sin, saying he did it because he is very poor and had no other option. He reminds them he's doing it for the benefits. Miss Jumbo asks him to lift his head, and tells him the punishment for killing her pet is not light. Still, she wants to show him mercy again. She asks if he wants to work with her in the garden and discusses this. Apparently, it's an excellent personal garden, and she thought that with the skills he showed with the purgatory buds and his ability to cultivate aquatic plants to purify poison, he could apply his knowledge in the garden. Hanjul thanks for observing him, and attributes it to his technique of the wine of sunlight, with which ordinary plants would take only 2 days to bear fruit. No matter how much time and effort he dedicated, they never grew beyond a sprout. She says it's because his training is not good enough. But he's bolder than he seems, even trying to negotiate with her. Hanjul tries to say something, but she assures him there's no problem. She will help him with some elixirs from her garden and provide the necessary tools to progress. Additionally, she will guide him in his enlightenment. He thanks her for everything, and apparently his plan was successful. He leaves. John calls a girl named her Kai, known as the Flower of Life, and asks her opinion of Miss Jumbo. She finds it suspicious. She was too helpful. He killed her pet and even the Lord of the Han River. Han must have an extraordinary brain or be a psychopath with a bad temper who has gone beyond his limits. With this in mind, Jumbo asked her to keep an eye on him, assuring her that she will only let him manage the gardens. Even if he has bad intentions, he won't be able to take any seeds from there. And if he does, she will use them as fertilizer. Meanwhile, Kai thinks to herself that she is working with Jumbo just for the peaches of immortality, as she dislikes her. However, she still hasn't managed to make them bloom in the city streets. Hanjul walks calmly, remembering the person behind Jumbo and guessing they must be around 300 years old, while Miss Jumbo is over 400. After achieving 10 stars in the solar wind in just a year, he can roughly determine others' abilities, though not precisely. According to his research, the age difference does not affect the level, as Norcha was 600 years old and some 400 years old, and they were on an equal footing. After checking his phone and measuring his level again, we learned that he deliberately showed false statistics to send Sonado. After learning all the solar wind techniques, he needs to make more effort. He goes straight to a tree and inserts the core of the Han River Lord into the ground. After this, we see him cultivating for a while, and upon waking up, he notices a strong smell of peach. The tree in front of him has served him well for cultivation, increasing the power of his breath. A week ago it bloomed and bare fruit. Although still small, it looks mature enough. When he is about to pick it, someone tells him that it's a careless act. It seems to be a brown bear. He asks who he is. The bear introduces himself as Gwanak, the god of this mountain. Here they comment that after the heaven's gate was opened, the spirits began to show their existence. And the owner of this mountain was a quite unfortunate spirit. Hundreds of years ago, when the capital moved to Hanjul, the officials believed that the mountain's fire energy would have an adverse effect, and added water energy by digging a pond in the south. As a result, Gwanak's energy we can constantly, and his colossal size also decreased. Hanjul tells him that he has been practicing for a year in this place and believed he could see him soon. It says that he didn't want to disturb him. Hanjul wonders what he means when he's about to eat the fruit. Gwanak worries that what he's about to do is a reckless act. Hanjul asks if he's referring to picking the peaches, and he says yes. The energy of the tree concentrates in the fruit, and if someone picks it, its protection won't work. So things could become dangerous and attract the wrong people. Gwanako also tells him that just like he found out late, or soon someone else will discover the existence of the tree. Suddenly the clouds start to darken. Gwanak says that they have probably come to look for the fruit, and apparently the person searching for it is called Soil, who practices fire techniques. Gwanak tells him that the human body couldn't handle all the medicinal effects of the fruit, but he is different. So he should give it to him to regain his spirit and protect him in the tree. On his part, Hanjul says sorry and swallows the fruit. Wanta can't believe what's happening, and recalls the Monkey King and Dong, wondering what will happen. Hanjul tries to absorb the power of the fruit, but feels nothing. Gwadak wonders how this could happen. Apparently the fruit hasn't vanished within the body. He feels a warmth coming from him, though not violent, but warm and gentle. Next resigns himself, and even says that the least powerful fruit takes 3,000 years to mature, so perhaps it won't have any effect. Hanji tells him that he's in trouble, and he can't even help, but Gwanak says that even if he wanted to, he doesn't have the strength. Hanjul throws something at him, and he gets angry. When he checks it, he realizes it's a seed from the purgatory plant and gets quite nervous, but then puts on a gentle face and asks if he's giving it to him. Hanjul gives him some more seeds and asks if it's possible for him to recover to some extent. But he tells him that from now on, he can sell oysters, which confuses both the protagonist and myself. Honestly, I don't know what he meant by that. It tells him that he can't regain his energy with just 3 herbs from the purgatory. Instead of talking, he should deal with the person looking for him. Hanjul opens a map function to show how close they're enemies. Gwanak asks if he intends to fight, and he says that if he doesn't, they will take the tree. Guana can't believe what he's hearing and thinks that with the protagonist level, he would surely be defeated. So he doesn't know what's going through his head. A person arrives where they are, and this is young Jijio. Hanjul asks if he's Nucleus' disciple, and if he ordered him to find him. Yun says yes, and takes out a yobun to face him. On his part, one says that thing is incredible, and he hasn't seen it for over 300 years. It's made with the tail of a 9-tailed fox, and is a relic that became a treasure. Hanjul tells Yon that even though his master is the celestial king, Seoul is full of people, so why should he create a fuss? Jean tells him that it doesn't matter what tricks he uses, or how loudly he shouts. Nothing will happen with the barrier that has been set up. One act says that this barrier is known as the Swanvu barrier, and has an unusual energy. It's a treasure that contains the power of the 4 gods. Yon gets angry with Granada's constant interference, and tightly grasps the Giovanni preparing to fight. Hanjul sees the power of that treasure for the first time, which seems to be a very good quality, and remembers that when Sin Salmon didn't come to see it, the energy spread throughout the mountain and reduced his abilities. He uses the tree breathing first stance, deforestation LXD. He uses the first fortress breathing and recovers all the energy he has shared. Yun shakes the Jivan and many beasts come out of it. Both attacks meet, but Hundred's power is greater. Wanta can't believe that a human being is completely united with nature, and wonders if such a technique is possible. Heji takes it, and wonders how powerful it is, when suddenly a huge attack hits him from behind, impacting him. It seems to be the fire doused who quickly runs up to Yon, but he couldn't do much as he seems to have lost his sanity. With this in mind, he thinks that since the disciple of the Celestial King has become like this in his realm, he wouldn't be able to escape no matter how prestigious his family is. He wouldn't be anything before him. On his part, John comes out of the fire and says that everything was in self-defense, and since he attacked him it will be the same. The Taoist tells him that he should have killed him a year ago, but now that they are at this point, he will make his whole body in this battle. He is at a disadvantage due to the fire element and tries to endure as much as he can, but it is quite difficult to counter such a devastating element, and his compatibility and battle with it is no. Want to call advises using the Gyovan to counteract it, and the Taoist attacks him. After thinking for a moment, Han prepares to try it. Multiple beasts come out hitting the Taoist, but he can't believe the level of damage caused. A large part of the mountains has been devastated. When he's about to lead the Taoists to tax him from behind, both are in a critical state. Hanjul thinks to himself that perhaps the Taoist survived because he's a scholar who has come quite far. The latter delivers the final blow, and walks towards him to take him away. John, lying on the ground, wonders if he will die, but something happens. The pain in his body disappears, and the ability of the immortal Peach is activated after. If rigorously analyzed, here they talk about the Monkey King who obtained a magnificent skin and was unaffected by the various shields of the Celestial Army. He endured the Celestial Pelo Aguero for 49 days despite the pressure from a god. His skin resisted for 500 years. On the other hand, Gon acquired the cells of the Peach because he wanted a worthy life after death, and not even the most brutal witchcraft used by the messengers of the underworld could kill him. Although, in the end, he gave up his regeneration ability. Returning to the present, now we see the new ability they unlocked, the Immortal Peach. This allows him to use regeneration and optimize its properties, obtaining an organ that handles various metabolic processes, including detoxification. The liver. It was filled with a cold water energy. The Taoist wonders how he can possess water energy and asks how that is possible. Hanjul tells him that he doesn't know how it happened. And without further ado, they prepare to fight. With a single yoga shake, the Taoist is completely defeated. Hanjul wakes up and one knock asks what happened in this place. As there's a lot of water energy, as Hanjul regains his senses, he realizes what's happening. Apparently, with just one of his attacks, he destroys a large part of the terrain, finishing off his enemy. After a while, he goes to check his enemy's belongings and tries to find the flag that controls the barrier. After searching for a while, he finds what appears to be a hidden bag, a bag designed to store both large and small items. This makes him wonder if young Jijio already has one. After telling him this, he says that there's no time and someone should be coming, so he must make a quick move. Hanjul carefully thinks about what to do and decides to carry the Taoists to a certain place. Quantic asks what he's thinking, since if they reach this point, they might find the tree. He tells him to give him a minute, and concentrating power in his hands, channels it into the ground using the wind blow with editor subpoena defoliation, wrapping the Taoist's body in leaves and absorbing him, making a new tree bloom. He tells one like that fortunately, it's not too late, and they manage to camouflage everything. Some people come to see but they turn back when they notice that there was nothing. One it says that if that Taoist had not been a wise person of the fire nature, he could have produced new fruits. Hanjul says that since they're talking about fruits, the peach has a special medicinal effect and asks how it's possible. Waynick tells him it's a very rare treasure, and few people know about it. He didn't see any change in him. He doesn't know if it's because the fruit hadn't matured or had no effects. While Hanjul thinks to himself that this effect changes according to the size of the fruit or the time, and even if he increases his power through the liver, his water energy will increase. So he would like to know what would happen if he ate an older fruit. After a while, Guanak tells him to take a look. Hanjul looks closely and asks if it's possible for him to leave the mountain. Waynick explains that he can share his alter ego, leaving his main body and traveling with him in a somewhat reduced form. However, to maintain this, it requires some power. Now that he's made contact with him, he can see the world through his eyes and practically begs him not to leave him. Heji tells him it's okay, but in return, he must give him whatever he can. He hands him a kind of garai and tells him that it's been around for a long time. On the Korean peninsula, there was a presence that appeared throughout East Asia. A fantastic race with intellectual capacity, a goblin as well as being excellent in basic physical skills. They were born with luck, and their nature was more than excellent. They possessed a special tool that made their abilities even more special, known as the goblin's gara. With his new acquisition, he asks if he can use it since he reads somewhere that only the owner can do so. One knack tells him it's true, but it's such an important treasure that the goblin wouldn't change it as it can't be made twice. Losing the garati meant the owner losing half of his strength. With this object, he can make its own or do anything. But Hanjul tells him that if that means he doesn't know who the owner is. One it says he found it by accident. While Hanji thinks to himself that anyway, he didn't expect much, and he tells him he likes it, which makes the little bear happy. With this finished, he says they are now going to work as gardeners. After collecting Yingji's COS belongings, we switch to another scene and learn that the G20 summit will be held in Seoul. The government made special arrangements to welcome all the top officials of the state. As this is announced, Hanjul is in a taxi. The driver tells him that the meeting will be held at the Tower of Babel. In ancient times, humans built it to reach the sky, turning it into an unprecedented great tower. It existed before the gates of heaven were closed and is about to be rebuilt as a project to unify languages. There would be many advantages, but there would also be enormous consequences. While they're in the car, something seems to happen outside. There's a person in front of them, and Hanlo wonders if it's a monster. However, it turns out to be Miss Hakenville, who asks him to get out of the car. She was asked to act as his assistant for a while. Whether she walks on a tightrope or gains profits, it won't be easy to coexist with her. If her name gets entangled in his affairs, she make him pay for it. He tells her he'll be careful, and she comes down. Guanak, now disguised, tells him that the girl must be going through a difficult time. He asks if he knows her, and he says just a little. He asks about her weakness, and he says he's handsome man, which surprises him a bit. Guanak comments that a long time ago, the famous architect of Yeoman, Dorian Island, had a son named Manga Achian, who was a very handsome man. Hei Sen Vi, who was an ordinary girl at that time, happened to see him bathing. And that's when her power awakened. Even though the gates of heaven were closed, Hanjo asks if he's lying, and he says it's impossible. He heard that sometimes children awaken when their body and mind are shocked. They were taken out of the human world by the ancestors and raised by great sects. Haki only came from an important family, and Dorian Boxion accepted her. She courted him. However, Boxio saw her as a young and ignorant person full of anger, causing big problems with conquest. The border of Yo Island saying that this is how it feels to pluck a flower, shake the sky and sweep the whole world. That's why they called her the Flower of Extinction, transformed into a Supreme Lord. She formally visited Dorothy's house, but he and his father, afraid of her judgment, made a plan to get rid of her when she was preparing for the dream wedding with a happy future. The Monterey family planned not to attend the wedding day. Instead, They sent many assassins to besiege her. The beloved one she had waited for so long turned out to be the weapons of her enemies. She was furious and let out all she had inside. The fight of that day was recorded as a great battle that shook the whole island. But in the end, she was the one who suffered defeat, betrayed by the love of her life. Wonderful comments that many approach seeking her talent. And rumors say they sent priests who looked very good to tempt her, but none of them returned with intact limbs. If they hadn't intervened, she might have been treated as a public enemy, even on the Korean peninsula. He asks if he doesn't feel relieved not to be able to influence someone like her. Hanjul asks why, and he says that obviously, his appearance is average, which makes him want to send him back to the mountain again. After a long journey, they arrive at a temple. He explains that there are 6 gardens in the pavilion, each numbered starting with the kindergarten. And the last one is where he will stay. Hanjul wonders if this place is the lowest, and he thinks that anyway, they wouldn't give him precious materials from the beginning. However, upon seeing it, he notices that it is just a desert with 2 suns and wonders why it is so messy. Hyun tells him that each door has a different time and space and another part of the world. And from now on, he will be the owner of this place. He must take care of the crops and protect it from the creatures of the other world. Hanji asks about the previous owner, and she tells him that this place has been closed since the death of the previous owner 100 years ago, which makes him reflect a little. As time passes, powerful people increase and the demand for medicines does too, which is probably why this garden was opened again. He won't work without pay. When the harvest season comes, there will be many things given to him. And with that he prepares to leave. But his phone falls and he manages to see a picture of some beautiful people, which makes him wonder if Gwanek's story is true. In a moment of nervousness, he tells her that he respects her. We see how he seems to be waking up, and Gwanek tells him that about an hour has passed since he was knocked out. Hanjo asks what happened, and he tells him that it was a clean blow that was executed without even using his power. He shows him the quality of the seeds they were given, while he looks at how tidy the place was. As if he shows his abilities, he is sure they will tell him to cultivate more valuable plants like peaches, or something with much more power. He has to use this garden to become stronger than he is now. Not to suffer in a world with a rebel immortals ravage everything. To protect not only himself, but his family too. And wonders what he should do with this disaster. Checking his sword, he notices that it's burned, and remembers the tough battles it went through. So he buries it while saying that he worked hard and concentrates his power. Apparently he can read the thoughts of plants, and restores her as a tree. He also makes some kind of fence while terrifying. Gwanek thinks that it's amazing that he did all of it in an instant. Han-Jon, on the other hand, grows some individuals on the ground. Using the execution of the winds of the sunlight and the art of cultivation singing, he summons some tree men and gives them orders to improve the terrain. Waynek says that it's incredible because he can handle the spirit of a tree, and it's a skill that even high-ranking scholars can easily master. Hanji says he needs to rest a little as he ran out of energy, and they arrived at the hut. He enters and says, "It's bigger than he thought." Gwanek tells him that the previous owner of the garden was named Gumbi Jin, and it's written in a book. Hanjul takes a position to recover his energy, and after doing it for a while, he feels something. Gwanek asks what's wrong, and he says he's not sure, but he definitely felt the heartbeat of a plant, and upon careful observation, he realizes it's on the floor. So using the seeds, he makes a pickaxe and begins to dig. After doing it for some time, they find a barrier. Gwanek tells him it's a blood barrier and holds a deep grudge. Hanjul thinks to himself that the heartbeats come from there, and by using the pickaxe to break it, they find a hidden room, in which they find several things, including a book that tells the story of Parker E.G., the 6th gardener, who was nicknamed Gumming. It tells the truth about Miss Jungwei and all the atrocities she committed. One day, after returning home and saying goodbye to his friends, he accidentally entered and was possessed by a ghost. At that moment, when he couldn't do anything, a scholar who was passing by drove the ghost away. He thanked him for his gesture, but the scholar told him that those ghosts had stuck to him, and if he stayed like that, he would be pursued by criminals or haunted by more ghosts, so they should leave this place before a great disaster happened. He would take him to a place where he would be at peace, and that's how he got to know Miss Yum's pavilion. They told him that if he cultivated and dedicated himself to spiritual practice, he could become a being who transcended the world. For him, becoming a student was like collecting stars from the sky. As he didn't progress so fast, He had to do various tasks and gradually weakened. He thought it was inevitable, and he couldn't continue growing until when he was about 30 years old. He met a boy who had gone through circumstances quite similar to his, but they were more shocking. He was also possessed by a ghost, but apparently it was the scholar who planted it in him. So he already knew why he was in this place. He was just a piece that could be acquired and replaced. After learning the whole story, he couldn't live as a servant. Instead, he bowed and asked those who had learned the earth element to teach him. His body, which had no strength, aged, and due to ridicule, he got the nickname Gumming and Age Figure from forced labor. When this happened, he thought it was his end. But then a miracle happened. Miss Johnwa rewarded him for all his sacrifices, granting him the position of the Lord of the Sixth Garden, and the martial art of the Earth Dragon, which had been secretly passed down for generations. How could he not be excited? He pledged to fulfill his mission until the day of his death. And from that moment on that earth, martial art increased his energy day by day, reaching the point where he could become a mystic immortal, corresponding to the 4th rank. But compared to the level he reached, his body became weak. And only then did he realize the horrible secret of the martial arts, the effect of boosting the energy given by the Earth Dragon. Martial arts is excellent, but it's not his energy itself. He became just a structure to be absorbed by the medicinal plants of the garden. Essentially, he became fertilizer. Hanjul apparently saw on TV that they were talking about this one. It tells him it's something normal. It is a method they often use to keep their things, while Haji thinks with fury in his eyes. And he could also become someone like Gumming, but he is not willing to accept it. He keeps reading. And the ancient owner of the garden says that if he has the ability to pierce the barrier, there is no doubt he is a talented person. For those who might be in the same situation as him, he leaves behind a treasure, a ginseng with a face that was cultivated by people. On the other side of the sea, it is called mandrake, and there is another object of which there is no record on. Hanjul thinks that is something strange. The heartbeat he felt before did not come from a seed but from that object. So he concentrates his power on it, but upon reacting to it, he throws it back. He thinks to himself that the object refuses to grow, as if the shape it has is absolutely necessary. So he wonders what it is. After having it for a while, he comes to the conclusion that it must be related to a sword. On the other hand, we see Miss Yun Hua, who is attending a very important visitor. This is the lady of the Isokonomy Palace, according to who tells her that the matter bringing her to this place is very important. She heard that she possesses the lost treasure of the palace, which disappeared about 100 years ago due to an accident, so she wants it back. The hilt of the 7 sword, which was known as the Sword of the 7 Arms, a rather peculiar object in Baisha, where the sword was made. It was originally a country that could not establish itself because of the 3 kingdoms. They were the only ones lacking the power to establish a country, while the first was established by Pak Jos, who had an irregular physique, and the second by Girl, the sacred son of Yun Hua, who possessed the blessing of the spirits and ancestors of the Korean peninsula. King Hongo established Ha without any power or background. He awakened his earthly physique, obtained the golden element, formed a martial art, and learned to control energy by himself, becoming an uncommon genius. Data was at its peak, but over time, due to the low power of its successors, its decline was inevitable, and even its traces disappeared over time. Only one remained: King John Shogo. The 7-armed sword was a rare masterpiece made by that sacred prince. Objects that could reach the ranks of great sacred treasures were created and stored in an archipelago. Back to the present, Jumbo asks Andrew wasn't the hilt originally not together with the blade. She tells him that she already knows that and tells him a story. In the past, there was a record that when King Ansho was about to give the sword to the celestial king, the messenger died in a disaster. The ship was found, the blade was recovered, and it was delivered to its country of origin, but not the hilt. Yumbo tells her that, according to her thinking, the sword actually has a hilt, but it is something strange. Apparently, she realized this only recently and asks why she wants to interrogate her about its whereabouts without any judgment. He says he didn't come to ask pointless questions. On behalf of the sanctuary, he is there to propose a celestial fight in 6 months. Jumbo asks about the conditions, and she tells him they will wager the blade of the 7-armed sword. If he wins, she will allow him to take one thing from her possession. If the hilt of the sword is at this place, she promises to take it only and assures him that everything will be confidential. Jumbo accepts, but adds one condition. 6 months have passed and people talk about broadcasting the celestial fight live. Some wonder why while others simply enjoy it. We see a person apparently heading to the sixth garden and telling his subordinates not to cause trouble to the owner of this place. As they enter the garden, they are amazed to see that the whole place has blossomed beautifully. It is no longer the desolate place it was before. Haji welcomes them while eating a bit. One of the people says it is rude to receive them while eating considering that their boss is Lord Lion, who is in the celestial immortal rank. Hanji dismisses their concern, introducing himself with a handshake. Lee responds to the greeting and tells him that he is there to take the report on the garden's progress. He shows the progress and tells his companions that he is not obligated to be addressed as Lord since he is also a celestial immortal, which surprises them. Lee talks about the celestial fight. From what he heard, it spans from the celestial rank to the immortal rank, and there will be 2 players for each rank. He says he didn't know this event was scheduled, and asks if he will be participating, to which he responds affirmatively. It is said that during the Korean War, he awakened his spirituality due to the shock of losing his family. Later in the pavilion, although he could have been looked down upon as Gumi Nene, he possessed the skills to be someone great. Hanjul thinks to himself that he can't trust most of the immortals, but this one seems quite amusing, as he even apologized for his subordinate's behavior. Lee tells him that the best celestial immortal is coachable, who is about to become a pure immortal and is related to Miss Yun's son, so he only got lucky. We change the scene, and now we see Miss Yun Hua talking about the fight. She says that the sanctuary accepted her proposal. The mortals support them because they killed a few creatures. If they play an active role in the matter of national pride, they can receive the same worship and praise as in Summon, who only killed 1 creature. A maid comes in and she asks, "What's the matter?" Besides asking about the well-being of the owner of the 6th garden, the maid says something which Anje Google, who says they are defaming him. A person named Dice says that it wouldn't be bad to deal with him. There's a rumor that he's deliberately staying in the celestial rank because he's afraid to compete with the pure immortals in the celestial fight, so he should only face him. Hanjul asked if he can compete with the Lord of the 6th Garden, and Shao was ready to confront him gathered with multiple people. He tells the Lord of the 6th Garden not to blame him for what is going to happen. Hanjul wonders why he has such emotions, but it's beneficial for his judgment to be clouded. In this table we see the ranges that have been displayed so far. Returning to the combat, Hanjul unleashes his power, charging multiple water spheres and attacking. On the other hand, Hanjul does the same and tries to counter them. Chowell tells him that he believes he can stop his attack with just his leaf shields and won't let them have fun with that anymore. Summoning what seems to be a gigantic ice attack, he changes the entire atmosphere. He tells him that he is just a troublemaker and will fall in this place. But right at that moment, Hanjul says that the charge is complete and activates the execution ability of the Solar Winds, star of the singing arts. He says that another will be executed. A massive solar explosion is launched, and Shao can't believe that he managed to absorb his power with a simple shield. He tries to escape by any means. When he's about to be finished, someone intervenes. They say they can't let a talented child be lost when the winner is obvious. This person is called Dan Doc. Shoal says he can still continue, but then Doc tells his godmother that he's confident in Hanjul's victory. Your work agrees, as his words are trustworthy, which makes Angela wonder why she accepted everything so easily and asks who he is. You are asking him what kind of training he's been doing for the 6 months. Hanjul thinks to himself that maybe she's suspecting his development, so he tells her that his element has a particularly fast rhythm for martial arts. He knows she brought him to cultivate, and if she wishes, he can do it right now. If she trusts him, he'll never betray her. You will tells him it's a bit bold, but she likes it. For now he should only focus on the competition. He says he'll be waiting after finishing it. Before leaving, he asks her a question, and this is whether he can leave for a moment. But what he didn't expect is that someone would accompany him. And this is and we see how anything catches his attention. He says that unlike when Dondeok first appeared, now he's really flexible. He asked him if he wants a drink. They spend a day together, and Dendiok seems to be enjoying the situations presented in the human world. Hanjul asks him if he's been here before, and he says yes, when he died for the first time in the human world. He became an immortal with the help of Miss Yua, but he felt bad knowing he would live in the immortal world and not in the human one. He thinks to himself that he died prematurely and must have had many regrets in the human world. Dendiok says that since everyone used his name in the world, he wanted to be remembered after he died. But it was immaturity. While he was in the immortal realm, he regretted not doing many things. He thanks Hanjul because he was able to enjoy and explore as he had always wanted. He tells him it's no problem, but Dendiok seems distracted by something. This is a protest against what the immortals have done to humans, condemning each of their acts, whether it's the Sea Dragon King or any other monster. They shouldn't sacrifice humans. Seeing this, Dandy gets deeply angry as they're sacrificing his people, and he tells Hanjul to go to the country's leader quickly. But something seems to happen in the sky. A spot appears, making them wonder if it's an eclipse. Dendiok asks Hanjul to take care of the citizens, and someone seems to come onto the scene, saying they should know their place. This person's name is Ogwayanter, so he uses the Javan to stop him, unleashing a terrifying power that impacts his opponent, or at least that's what he believed. A thick mist begins to surround him, and in the distance, voices of people asking for help can be heard. The scene he was seeing was discouraging, and the pent-up rage in his body was about to erupt. Suddenly, he senses something and manages to dodge it at the right moment. Jean says she didn't expect him to be in this place. To her, he's a wanderer who's in the wrong world, so she take away the most precious thing he has, his life, in the name of her lord. Hanjul wasn't willing to back down from these words. He says he knows he's a neutral agent. He's sure because he possesses the same energy as Jin, and because he's openly showing his hostility towards him. He asks if she was close to Idaho, but these words only make the girl even angrier, who tells him that no matter what happens, she make his crimes be paid with blood. Her words amuse him. He concentrates his power on the ground, spreading it all over the place. With that, several trees grow. He tells them that it is up to them to pay for their crimes, and their army is ready for battle. A horde of tree people run towards her and her people. The scene was changing. Therefore, she asks her people to release all those sign they appear to be evil spirits that they can control with their yen power. It would be difficult for him to get rid of them. Even if he used his nine-tailed fox fan, he couldn't guarantee it. He didn't think he would use it so soon. Thanks to the purchase of a pipe, he managed to get it. At this moment, the hero begins his chemical activity, and the properties of mandrake are revealed. This increases his muscle strength and endurance. His concentration is at its peak. His nerves are better and he can activate his muscle cells to the maximum. In fact, it charged itself. The hero puts the seed in the ground and creates a field of swords. He wouldn't let these monsters get away with it. He begins to destroy all evil spirits without exception. The battle became fiercer and fiercer. He holds a pipe in one hand and a sword in the other. Not far from there, the girl we met earlier was watching intently, and he said that no matter how much strength he had, he would not be able to deal with his ghosts. She immediately ordered her subordinates to release everyone, contain, and capture the main character. Suddenly she starts losing blood. None of them know what is going on, or how they are under some illusion. Even he does not know what is happening to her now, but the main character looks calm. He tells them he's not crazy enough to keep playing with swords. She asks what kind of smoke they all inhaled. Apparently one of the properties of mandrake is that it can eliminate toxins because it uses its power in the liver. But for other people, it is equivalent to poison. His power is secondary, but it's truly terrifying. She cannot do anything, and in the last moments of her life, she calls her father to heaven. Light appears and Hanjul avoids it. His look was very angry because of what happened. And Dendiok asks the girl if the person in his arms is her father. This surprises the main character. The man in front of him is a neutral heavenly king. She cannot believe what is happening. The neutral sky king asks who they are, and if they don't know who he is. Dendiok says he doesn't care to know. He committed an unforgivable sin by touching his people. He must not resist, as it will all be in vain. Nuka just laughs like a maniac. He says he wondered why he was doing it. His power starts overflowing, and a macabre smile appears as he tells them to remember this before they go to the afterlife. Because they interfered with his plan, he won't leave a single mortal alive. He was absorbing the power of all the people present there. Not only those who had passed away, but also those who were well at this moment. Hanjul doesn't know why they're dragging innocent people into this. The martial art he was watching was too unpleasant. He couldn't think of a way to stop it or which of his weapons to use at this moment. He wasn't sure if it would work, but he had no other way. Dendiok says the martial art they're facing is from ancient times. He didn't expect to see the incarnation of Maitreya in the human world. He asks Hanjul to lend him his sword. In his eyes, he sees that he's determined. So he launches himself. He nearly gauges his power in a single strike. He splits it in half. The sphere that had been created to awaken an ancient power begins to collapse. And as he leaves, he says he has no right to punish him. Even though he belongs to the immortal realm, he has committed multiple sins against innocent people. He won't take the lives of his fellow immortals lightly, but as a member of the immortal realm, he'll take responsibility for applying the appropriate punishment. No teacher was in really bad shape. After receiving this blow, he finished this once and for all. With that, the battle had concluded. The news spread throughout the city. If everything had been resolved thanks to the help of some immortals, at this moment people were being identified. The suspects for this attack were from the wall of an organization. The news had reached the ears and eyes of Miss Young GWA. The Immortal Society had managed to solve it. That was the debate they were having. Don't they think they made a move since they don't care about the masses? They had obtained scenes of the fight and presented to heroes who fought bravely to protect them. One of them looked quite familiar. This was the hero who appeared a year and a half ago and defeated the huge bird that was menacing the people. In front of Yumbo, there were two people. Tonto Jaco apologizes for causing inconvenience. He says he doesn't have the qualifications to belong to the immortal realm and has committed a huge sin. So he asked for punishment and is willing to face it. Miss Younge asks Hanjul how dare he look into her eyes, and he is also involved in the incident. He apologizes, even though he knows she's not angry. She actually liked it when Dendeo shut up, defeated by Neuter. She basically berates them because he wants to. She tells Dundalk to raise his head. His actions were not wrong. However, she scolds him to be more careful. As for Hanjul, he should be ready for disciplinary action. And with that, she asks them to leave. He returns to the Sixth Garden. It seemed to him that a long time had passed. He could finally check it out. He had felt the power of something before, and he didn't expect it to be hidden in the Great Seal statue. The monument was built several years ago, so he didn't believe that the script he was holding had any power. Fennec surprises him and says that it is an edible leaf. He was called Seiyo. After the death, Hanjul asks if he did something bad to him. He's very angry. He says that the family there suppressed the energy of his mountain when they founded the country. What had weakened him to this point? He ignores it and focuses on what is in front of him. When he starts reading, he realizes that this person actually wrote it. There he tells a story. He didn't have much time left, but he wasn't afraid to leave either. However, the only disappointment he felt as a father was that his children were walking ahead of him, and the rest was concerned for the people he would leave behind. During this period, it weighed more heavily on him because of the deity's curse they had suffered. He was worried that after he and Yang die, someone protected by the immortals would seize power and cover the land in blood. Long ago, many people lost their lives solely to the immortals before they returned to the human world. People who had not awakened their spiritual bodies needed strength to resist them. In the far northeastern countries, there were letters called runes, and it was said that by combining them extraordinary power could be revealed. If he could compose a text from these letters, he could save them. Guanak says that perhaps he was trying to create the power of a language system. He was a prominent figure known even in the realm of the immortals. If he had lived a little longer, maybe he would have succeeded. Hanjul tells him that maybe he succeeded. If a person could read and write well, he could activate it. Anyone can use it. His final wish was for it not to fade away, and for people to easily fulfill their goals. The future that this great king wanted had come true, and the protagonist would be responsible for carrying it out. He was practicing everything he had learned so far. He could manipulate things around him, and was very surprised by this progress. Everything he could do now was thanks to the power of words that invoked a suitable sound for the instructions of the people. This book said that if they could imagine the words in their head, then they could use them by simply speaking them aloud. Just by mentioning the word burn, the things he had manipulated immediately entered a state of combustion. It was all as he had imagined, and he was so excited that he mentioned the word again and again. Guanak was barely waking up and asked why there was so much commotion. He couldn't help but be surprised when he saw what was happening. He asked how a person who couldn't even make fire had found a way to create it out of nothing. Hanjul found an excuse to continue on his way, while telling him that he should be more careful next time. The more he spoke, the stronger the fire became, which meant he had to say the word as loudly as possible to make it more powerful, or so he believed. as he wasn't sure. Saying the word louder might consume more. If he could do it with many people, perhaps his power would amplify. He had to analyze this point thoroughly. Instead of using short phrases, if he could make a long, meaningful one, he might create something more potent and effective. Since the power behind a word is intention, he asked the sky to weep and shout as much as it could. But nothing happened. Saying these words was rather embarrassing. When he turned around, he noticed something. Hachon saw everything he was doing, and immediately retaliated by repeating the words he said to her earlier, and adding that he was the craziest person under the sky. As if that wasn't enough, she ended with the phrase he used on her. She didn't have to worry about what he was doing because she respected him. After the humiliation, he asked why she was in this place. She said that she heard that he was involved in a celestial battle. She asked if he had won his fight, and he said he had improved a bit. He was still a little ashamed of what had happened. For her part, she told him that she was in this place because she was about to engage in a heavenly battle. She has already made a bet, went out for a while to prepare before the event, and found something that could be useful. Supposedly, she should have been taking care of him, but she hadn't. And from what she could see, everything was going well in this place. She handed him an object. He asked what it was, and she told him it was a scroll. They only told her to give it to him. He asked who it was from, and she said it was from a sage. This person was actually his father. He couldn't believe these words. The anger he had begun to overflow. He asked where she had met this person who called himself his father. She told him she had met him in Kung Fu a long time ago, when descended from the heavens, and gave Artemis his root to a bear and a tiger who wanted to become humans. Unlike the tiger who fled, the bear endured by eating only Artemis's root in a cave, thus becoming human. Together with him, they raised some descendants and created a new story in Korea. This was the myth everyone knew. What was not remembered from this myth was that his wife was not legitimate. Quantum, who was in charge of ruling the world of humans, along with his family, free from any animal blood, made the sacred tree of life grow. This was the only place where the heavens connected with the earth. This place was known as Shanpu. Hae-sen told him that his father was married to the youngest princess Ovo and resided in that place. He had finished his work there and was preparing to return. That's when he met this person. He said his son was indebted to the palace. There will be problems soon. So he entrusted him with this gift, as something important was there. He believed that his father had abandoned his family and gone elsewhere. Although this was quite confusing, as at the beginning of the story, it was mentioned that he had passed away. According to what the protagonist recounted, he had squandered all the fortune they had for his own use, and the burden of debt fell on his mother and grandmother. He bore all the guilt on his shoulders. Still, his grandmother had passed away, and all the sacrifices had been in vain. His father had found a new family. He didn't know how he had entered this place. But now that he possessed great status, his previous family shouldn't mean anything to him. Hanjul asked him to open it, as it was a very good item. Upon doing so, he found something quite promising. This was a sealed mystical bamboo fan. Essentially, it was a fan created for the purpose of controlling demonic beasts and evil spirits. A fan with 24 blades was considered a high-quality product, but one with 48 blades was considered the best. What he held in his hands was even more brutal, with a total of 72 blades. He didn't know why he would be given something so good. Quantum told him it was a very valuable treasure, only if he was willing to use it. He immediately stores it and says that there is no way he won't use it. He will keep it as his most precious possession. She is a little happy about how things turned out. She knows that he is not walking an easy path with this. He had obtained a fan and instructions on how to use it 8 hours before the celestial battle. He could feel he was with someone. That's when he encounters Den Deok. Den Deok tells him that he has made significant progress, and knows he couldn't be defeated so easily by 2 second-rank warriors. He thanks him for his words and asks him why he has come to this place. He tells him he is there to ask for a favor to help him create the flute of the 10,000 waves. The era of One Potato the Great was due to the strong power of its leader. Even the ancestors who participated in the founding of the country couldn't easily understand it. But when the interference of adults entered, and as if they had been waiting for it, the Dragon Kings caused a natural disaster, leading to the decline of humanity. To counteract this, the lords of the 3 kingdoms temporarily united. That's how the flute of the 10,000 waves was made. Created by the masters of the 3 kingdoms. It had too much power, and to complete it, There were two restrictions. The first was that it should not leave the Korean peninsula, and the second was that they should not use the tower against the people living on the peninsula. It was given to a qualified person who was capable of opposing the Dragon King of the East Sea. According to what Dandioka has analyzed, it is possible that they destroyed it due to the restrictions. So he says he is there because he believes he can recognize the ingredients. He owns a garden. Soon the garden's boundaries will loosen due to preparations, and he will seize this opportunity to go to the second garden and collect the black jade bamboo. However, if this were to happen with the emergence of a new flute, he couldn't avoid suspicion from Miss Yun Hua, as he couldn't explain the flute's origin. And there would be a conflict with the Dragon Palace forces, as they would be monitoring everything. He intended to take full responsibility. The reason for this is because of the protests he saw last time in the city. It's different from other ancestors, so he is willing to help. He tells him he is impressed that there is someone like him, and it would be a sin if he couldn't help him. Dandaek is very happy with his words. He knew he would help him, and he could count on him because they are good friends. He did it not only for this, he also thought about getting some benefits if possible. With this, they were getting ready to leave. While this was happening, he was thinking of a way to collect anything, as everything in this place would be precious medicine. They arrive at the designated place. In the distance, an important island. John can be seen. He didn't know they could enter through the gate where waste is disposed of. Dandaok tells him that the pavilion added these places within the structure so they could be a point for people to pass through. What they were going to do wouldn't be easy. He takes out a wooden horse, and when he fills it with energy, it takes on its true form. He asks the protagonist to take his hand since they are going on an interesting journey. They head quickly to the floating island, and Dendiok tells him not to worry because not a hair on his head will be touched. He doesn't know what he's talking about, but when he turns around, he realizes what he meant. Many monsters are chasing them, but they manage to leave them behind. Dendiok tells him that due to the obstacles, he won't be able to enter the island, but he must trust him. But Hanjul, they already had his own obstacles. He takes out his pipe and gets ready to deal with the monsters in front of him. Since his brother is looking after him, the power of the words he received earlier has a wide range of versatility. Simply by saying the word fast, his speed increases. He felt unusual energy into places. It would be good if he could find the black jade bamboo. He senses something. A strange reptile man attacks him. Remember, there were 9 ranks, and this individual is around the 5th. If he had the same attribute, he would be at a disadvantage because there were many in the area. Even if he used the mandrake, it would be difficult for him to break through. It was time to use the gift his father had given him. They launched an attack using the sealed mystical bamboo fan. This unleashes a terrifying power. From this fan emerges a huge brown bear. The reptiles are frightened by its presence and try to flee, but it doesn't let that happen. He is euphoric to fight again, after a long time, and asks the protagonist to swing the fan once more. He can't contain himself. He is known as the god of the fire mountain. The great mountain signifies evil among the spirits that lived there. Those who ruled over it and contained the evil characters were only a minority. Goanaxon Mountain has a fire form so it can turn into a volcano. In the past, people thought these fires would spread to the city. To extinguish the fire, a pond was created at the top of the mountain and a statue was placed there to contain it, suppressing the mountain's energy for a long time. It's as if they guessed it. This brown bear is Guanak. He asks him where he is heading. He doesn't want the reptiles to get away. So with this in mind, he is determined to follow them. From what he observed, the black jade bamboo must be consuming half of the island's nutrients. But still, everything is growing quite well. He manages to see something, so he quickly heads to that place. It's there when they realize that there is a huge turtle shell where the reptiles are trying to take refuge. And in the center, a huge black jade bamboo is growing. He could see something hidden in a rock. Guanak wanted to keep fighting, so we asked him to send him back into battle. He asks if he's sure about this, but he's only interested in fighting at this moment, and he assures him he can burn them all. Hanjul once again uses the fan, causing him to regain his beastly form and finish off all the reptiles in his path. While doing this, he feels something. It was sinister eyes staring at him in the distance. A stream of water starts to envelop him, and he asks the protagonist to get him out of this place. Using some roots, he manages to suppress this power. He has found the entity that is fertilizing the Guanaco Island. He's quite scared. What's in front of him right now is a cub, which makes him wonder how big is an adult. Although it seems Gwanak doesn't like those who possess the majesty of a celestial beast and domesticate them, they gain great power. The Lee family had one. The reason he had to watch how they took away its energy was because of these beasts. Although the one in front of them is relatively young, around 200 years old, he analyzes the situation, since it can't even resist. It hasn't even learned the basics, which is great for him. Gwanak is a little scared about what he's going to do next and begged him not to. Although he doesn't care much about what he thinks right now, he's going to acquire this beast anyway. He now possesses two powerful beings within his fan. They don't get along, but for him, it's only a matter of time. He's collected something good, so he needs to move. Thanks to his brother, he managed to escape this place unharmed. He feels the breath that it emits. Apparently, it had been injured. He's worried about it, but it tells him to relax. It will recover soon if it stays still in a quiet place. He doesn't know what to do. In a few hours, his brother will have a battle. Still, with all this, it offers him something more. This apparently is a core. It tells him he's done him a great favor, which is not easy. There were a couple of twin dragons guarding the garden. He wanted to give him both, but he could only acquire one. Den Diok asks him not to be sad. He even betrayed Yambo's grace to help him. He knows this won't be the end of what his brother will pay. Once he creates a new flute of the 10,000 waves, he will find himself in a situation where he can't avoid Yuan's anger. If that moment comes, he'll be there. He accepts the pearl. Den Diok tells him that refusing a favor to protect pride is not the behavior of a manager. He is why he keeps calling him sir and tells him you can call him elder brother. He laughs a bit at his words. The person helping him right now is strong, a good man and an excellent human being. He just asks him to wait a bit. He will become strong enough to call him elder brother. Days later, the competition had begun. It was even being televised. It was taking place in the AC, more precisely in Dokdo. The presenter commented that the momentum of the martial ancestors was quite overwhelming. It was unknown who would emerge victorious in this battle. Unlike previous tournaments in this one, the winner of a round would stay and face the opponent repeatedly until there was a winner. Some people were worried because it would be quite disadvantageous for the victor of a battle since they would be tired and their opponent wouldn't be. Here we see our protagonist. He was thinking about how his brother would be, although he looked fine on the outside. He was still seriously injured before the competition began. Two young ladies from different palaces dedicated some words to the people watching. They were sending congratulations to the Sea Dragon King of the Sea. This is because they were in his domain and they didn't want any trouble. That's why they offered an equivalent sacrifice and exercise caution in preparing the competition to avoid future problems. The work of temporarily filling the sea for the battle begins. Two islands start emerging from the sea. This was the power of the immortals. Two foreign ancestors had appeared. This was done to make the competition fair. High-ranking scholars were invited to keep everything in order. One of them said that in Sheila's name, he would judge the battle with all the honor he had until there was a winner. He swore to protect Jumbo's wealth and accessory with his life. Another guy said he spoke in Noten's name. He would judge the battle fairly with all the honor he had until there was a winner. He swore to protect the seven-armed blade with his own life. Hanjul immediately feels a resonance. The hilt he had found was actually one with the seven-armed blade. The latter awakens from its dormant state. His caretaker sword starts resonating too, which makes everyone concerned. To control it, he poured his own power into it. This sword has a strong competitive spirit. He apologizes to the seven-armed blade because his sword can't see a worthy opponent and goes crazy. It's rare that this happens because the seven-armed blade doesn't have a swordsman. He apologizes for interrupting the event. Yumbo praises him, saying that the protector of such an important sword should at least show the level by testing it. So the treasures presented are very valuable. She had called him the sword breaker, which resonates in the protagonist's mind. The man he had in front of him was the broken sword, or as Yumbo called him, the sword breaker. This name was given because no sword could withstand him wielding it. It's said that this person has one of the highest combat skills among the Valhalla ancestors. His name is Bivolf. At this moment, Hanjul was safe because the hilt had calmed down. If it weren't for the person in front of him, everyone would have found out that he was the bearer of that hilt. He wonders if he already knows. The first fight was about to begin. Anli stepped forward to defend his territory. This was the first round among the celestial immortals. Hanjul secretly cheers on one of his brothers. Meanwhile, Bojan, who will call Hyanwar, says that the boy is unhappy. Don't ask why. I changed the names for now. I got lazy. This girl is from the Gull family and was present when they chose him for the class of celestial immortals. She asks him to look carefully, although he doesn't know what she's talking about. Something seems to be happening on the battlefield. The opponent of AI unleashes Yakai called Kamaitachi. These ghostly weasels attack him without any mercy. Lee is ready to stop this attack. The battle becomes fiercer and fiercer. Blows are exchanged. He believes he found an opportunity to counterattack, and when he was about to achieve his goal, something happens. The opponent's Yakai is suddenly increased in number. Hanjul can only witness what is happening in terms of fighting skills. His brother is ahead, but the opponent managed to gain explosive power in an instant, and this is due to his treasure. She asks him if he now understands what she had told him. Lee is just a novice who waits for orders. The competition is also a place to test the skills of Korean and Japanese ancestors. Many influential people were watching this, and the purpose of this contest was to give a performance worthy of their memory. Jumbo wanted to once again demonstrate the dignity of his Go family, and for that he would crush the Japanese ancestors. Lee is just a stepping stone, but he is not yet ready to give up. He still has an unbreakable fighting spirit. However, his condition is quite bad. The wound he suffered seems to be bleeding deeply. It is unknown if he can continue in the battle. His opponent attacks again with his Yakai. Lee tries to confront him. He doesn't want to lose, but he still lacks power. For the first time in the entire battle, they manage to make him kneel. His body begins to tremble, and this is how he collapses. The Japanese team, or an OG, had won. A feeling of anger had awakened Hanjul. At this moment, he felt fury. I told him that he should have been grateful since they had prepared the stage for him to shine if he could win. She tells him to try to lose as dynamically as possible so that she can look better on stage. He says he will do his best. He won't try to stand out. All he will do is win. The next battle was decided for Hanjul, the person who became famous after a series of incidents. Everyone wondered what kind of skills a Hanjuli would show, and they underestimated him. They said they had already seen the power of his comrades, so this would be a piece of cake, or so they thought. Hanjul disappears, and when he reappears, he unleashes all his fury on him. The punch he landed surprised everyone present. In just a matter of seconds, he had defeated his opponent. Although he did not emerge unscathed from the battle, the audience was worried that he might not be able to continue with the fight, and that he would collapse in the next round. Hachien-Fai thinks he's insane because he ran defenseless, and she asks if he doesn't value his life. On the other hand, his brother says it was a bold and effective move, although she didn't think his words were the most accurate. Den Diok tells him not to worry since his brother's techniques are very advanced. The latter takes some supplements, increasing his vitality, although he doesn't fully recover to give the impression that he's injured even though he's actually fine. The Omnio G team sends their second participant. Just by looking at the protagonist, she knew this would be a tough fight, so she prepares to use her talismans. Summoning some puppets, with them, she could protect her body, so he had no choice but to use one of his methods. She thought he would do the same as he did with the previous participant, so he was a bit overconfident this would work against him. He had also summoned some warriors, but these had much more power. The battle ends using a Korean note. She's about to start singing and literally starts singing a military song. Everyone thought this had no purpose, but the power contained in those words is unleashed and runs through the bodies of all her puppets. The power of words was present, and it was truly terrifying. The girl didn't know what to do. Everything was about to fall in the last 15 minutes. This song had crushed everything she cherished. What the cameraman and the presenter were witnessing was incredible. Hanjul had given to victories to Korea in an instant, and all he had to do was make a move. With this, his enemies couldn't judge his skills. Today's competition was just a spectacle to highlight the Nhua family. That's why they put sacrifices like Lee. However, although he didn't intend to participate in the show, he intended to be the main character. Currently, the Japanese side had to defeat its celestial immortals. At this moment, they would use a pure immortal to face the protagonist. That's when they introduce us to a new character. He wore the clothes of a shinobi and no one knew why these people were getting involved in the affairs of a sanctuary. Hanjul analyzes his opponent. The magnitude of his power was on another scale compared to a celestial immortal. From this moment on, he would fight with a person of the 6th rank. He was one rank above him, and he could feel it when he attacked quickly and he had to take cover with his puppets. Shinobi pierced the puppets and he ended up face to face with his adversary. The shinobi tried to use his hidden weapons. He managed to dodge them just barely, but his weapons were explosive, so he was right within the attack range of the shinobi, who wouldn't miss this opportunity. He uses the power of words again and says the following: where the earth ends, it must turn into light and fly far away. With this, he manages to emerge unharmed from the attack. He was almost cut into, so he had to respond differently. He uses the fin and summons Guanak. Guanak was quite angry because he had been left with the divine beast. He asks who had injured him. Guanak realizes that the guy he's facing is from the Suzuki clan, so he gets excited and prepares to finish them off. A pure immortal couldn't do anything against him, and the guy who was facing had the gold attribute, so he was vulnerable to fire. He couldn't withstand this power constantly. He could barely face it. His suit was about to melt. Guanak boasted of having won when he's about to deliver the final blow to his opponent to stop. This is exactly what the shinobi had been waiting for. He uses a technique that he didn't think he could develop. This is the technique of wet iron that allows you to freely manipulate the shape of the metal. If he wanted to get out of there, he needed cold energy to suppress the ire. Guanak didn't have cold energy, but he remembered that someone from his arsenal possessed it. He could feel a familiar presence. It was once again the divine beast that continued to torment him. The Great Pole had been created, which was a circle divided into two parts representing yin and yang. Although the protagonist didn't know what they were talking about, the shinobi could no longer continue. The defeat had been quite humiliating for him. He seemed exhausted, but he still had strength left. But someone asked him to leave. This was Ninganjo, who said they were in a competition. Basically, it was an arranged event to reach a peaceful agreement among the different participants, so he didn't think there was a need to put their future and lives on the line. Although she feigned hypocrisy, Hanjul knew that the shinobi was not part of the sanctuary, so she couldn't give him orders to fight to the death. He wasn't sure, but there was a possibility that he had been borrowed by the sanctuary from the renegades in some closed-door deal. These were mercenaries from ancient times. Jumbo also intervened and said she felt sorry for the two young men, and since she had made a confession, she would also abstain and consider her own young ones. She told Hanjul that he had done a very good job since he had won the competition 3 times. She didn't think he had these qualities and tools. She did not expect this from him. Hanjul knew she was pretending to congratulate him, but in reality, she was belittling him and shouting it loud enough for everyone to hear. With that in mind, he told her that if she had talked to him beforehand, he would have made the show better. She asked him what he meant by that, and he told her that he knew she was concerned about monopolizing the attention of mortals, meaning ordinary people. He approached her and told her that as a native of the world, he would be more aware of how foolishly she thought. Basically, he didn't want her to steal the spotlight from his family. The shinobi still couldn't accept this defeat. Hanshin asked him to sit beside her. She also congratulated him on his good work. She told him that it was very bad. He thought she was referring to him, but she clarified that she was talking about him using the idol analogy. She began to explain to him that in idol selection programs, people are called products because regardless of their ability, they are pushed by their superiors. They fought splendidly. It would have been better for the boy in front of them to lose while giving his best. She just wanted to be admired by mortals and didn't understand their tendencies, so she didn't think he could understand a word of what she said. Here, the protagonist presents another analogy in terms of football. It's like replacing a forward who isn't tired yet. No matter how hard he tries to please the audience, they won't applaud him. They had a little conversation about idols, although she denied it was related to these programs. He told her he respected her and received a blow. The next match was about to begin. Suddenly, an earthquake was felt on the island. The waves began to rise, and people wondered if it was a tsunami. Over the waves, there was a group of people asking, "Where are the rebels who defy the ruler?" Hanjul wondered why these guys were here in this place, and the protagonist asked, "Who are they?" She told them they were the sons of the Sea Dragon King of the East, and the person in the middle was the eldest son. The latter said he didn't want to hear excuses and accused them of disrespecting the Sea Dragon King of the East who ruled over all these lands. He asked if they thought they would notice that they had hidden the 7th arm blade and its hilt, and if they wanted to exchange these treasures far from their sight. People didn't know what was happening before they made a move. They conveyed the kind words of the king they must give up the 7-arm blade and its hilt. If they show sincerity by offering an apology and tribute, he will forgive them and return the confiscated items. The two protectors prepared to do their duty, and the eldest son of the sea dragon of the east also prepared himself. Using water, he created multiple dragons with which he set out to throw them into the sea. The dragons devastated everything in their path. Many people were lost in what seemed to be an endless sea. Hanjul wondered what was happening. Even if he could take advantage of the confusion and steal the blade, he didn't know where his protector was. But he found him. The seven-armed blade was in sight. She just had to make it resonate with the hilt. But this wouldn't be easy at all. Everyone on the island was suffering from the onslaught of the sea. Underwater, he tried to keep holding on. He hadn't achieved his goal yet. The hilt began to resonate and called the blade to follow them. Finally, he had succeeded with the flow of the currents. He was transported to an unknown place. He didn't think the power of the seven-armed blade would push him to the middle of the sea. He had to get out of this place quickly. The blade in his hands began to shine. This was a more powerful and clear energy than the tools he had used before. He had never seen anything like this. This was the golden energy of the seven-armed blade. He wondered if this had happened because he had found the hilt and if that's why it was emitting so much energy. Although, in his opinion, it was too excited to use this power against him. If he wanted to tame it, he had to control that power. Although it was too explosive, his body wouldn't endure it, so he prepared to release it with a single shake. He opened what seemed to be a portal. These were cracks in space, and one of them sucked him in. He entered a kind of unknown dimension. He didn't know what this place was and where he was. He wondered if the seven-armed blade had created this space. With this in mind, he prepared to wield the sword to see if it was feasible to return to where he needed to go. But before exploring this place, he suddenly said something, but he was too slow to react. Something hit his body, causing a very serious wound. The person who had done this was none other than the shinobi. Apparently, after losing the competition, he had followed him to this place. He reached where he was and took advantage of the fact that he was injured to torture him. But before this, he asked him what tools he wanted him to use. Hanjul told him that he didn't speak his language. With this in mind, he prepared to choose for himself. He was distracted for a moment, and the protagonist used this to counterattack. The shinobi said he had known his plan from the beginning. It's garbage. And no matter how well it works in the first second, its plan is too easy to detect. It says its attribute is quite good, and it will ensure to eat the plant it has in its hands. I don't know how the protagonist guesses that it wants to eat the plant, but he tells it that it's not its purpose. Reality begins to shift and the screams of the mandrake come to the surface. With it, he can free himself from his adversary. His condition was not good at all. He could have defeated the shinobi, but he had still paid a high price. Right now, he couldn't even move, so he prepares to use one of his tools. With it, he summons Wanak in his human form. Wanak tells him not to worry. He'll be fine if he takes a pill and uses his breath to recover. Hanjul asks him to be honest, since he can tell his expression is not good. Wanak tells him that his lower energy core is very damaged for some reason. He could feel his energy slipping away like water. If he left it like that, all his work over time would be lost, and with it, his life would also go away. There was nothing they could do, so he would use his last resort. Wanak tells him that this is something he can't handle right now. The spiritual core he received from his brother has accumulated a large amount of spiritual energy, comparable to an 8th rank, immortal, or even higher rank like the owner of the core. It hadn't transformed into a dragon yet. The object his brother gave him was filled with poisonous tenacity and determination that would do anything to become a dragon. He had only lived less than 100 years, and he didn't think he could endure it. Even his brother wouldn't have given him that to eat. Hanjul apologizes for what he's about to do. Even when one tries to stop him, he consumes the core. We change the scene and see Yun-gyul. She seems quite angry, mistreating her servants and telling them to leave immediately. Rage was eating her from the inside, reaching the point of unleashing a chilling aura. They were in the territory of the sea, but she doesn't understand why the owner of that territory treated them that way. Everything was going perfectly, so she doesn't know why this happened. Because she was stabbed in the back, she had gotten rid of many obstacles in her path. It's strange because there's one of the 3 gods who supported her. The only one losing in this was the dragon Talus. She doesn't know what the first was born of the EC Dragon King meant when he said he had other treasures. She doesn't know if they stopped the competition with lies, since that's not a method. She doesn't know where such information could have come from, and they made a move. It's because her informant must have a high level of credibility. Anyway, her plan to become a new hero and be adored by humans failed. Although thanks to Dan the Ark, the plan was not completely wasted. She had been categorized as a hero who saved Korea once again. Soon, the entire East Sea would bow before her. We change the scene, and we see someone about to wake up. This is our protagonist, who had slept for a long time. His lower core had been healed correctly, and to horns that appeared on his forehead, he didn't know what this was due to. They were very sensitive, and even allowed him to feel the temperature around him. It could be a side effect of the dragon pearl. He didn't know how much time had passed. His body had cleaned up quite a bit. Judging by how he was at this moment, someone had to have taken care of him all this time. He wonders if it was Waynick. He doesn't know where this place is. After using the sealed bamboo mystic fan to create a barrier, while using the dragon core, he released it. He had risked a lot to take care of his battered body, so he quickly goes to look for him. When he leaves the room, he finds himself in a giant forest. He had created a barrier with plants, but he didn't know how much time had passed for them to grow to this extent. When he looks in front of the barrier, he finds some traces and wonders if one had a fierce fight with someone. He was very worried as he didn't want anything to happen to him. Something moves within the forest, and he tries to catch it by all means. Running a bit further, he comes across what seems to be a sanctuary. This seems to be the place where his companion Waynick lived, but it was actually Hitai's property. He had grown a lot, and he asks him why they are cautious. Looking around, he notices something and is attacked by a beast. He manages to easily dodge its attack. A gigantic dragon appears in front of the beast and tells it not to bite its owner. With this, it becomes docile again. He was still young, so he had to show his strength to control it. Although it was said that he would become a dragon by eating the core, his internal energy had not changed much. This was possibly because he used most of the energy to heal himself. His companion and brother had kept all his things, and apparently, there was something good. It was the secret book left by the shinobi. According to what Wana had told him earlier, his opponent was from the Suzuki clan. There were only a few types who used a proud pattern of a three-legged crow, and were known as the renegades of Zika. What he had in his hands was the secret book of the three-legged body. In addition to the shinobi, his clothes that gave him the ability to change his form with the gold attribute. So with this in mind, he was getting ready to change. Something was happening, so he headed in the direction where the commotion was occurring. There was someone in this place. Apparently, they were people looking to break the barrier. They had blue skin, were large, and had somewhat strange hair. So it is believed that they are residents of the area. Looking more closely, he realizes who they are. They have a club like the one that gave him. They might be the goblins. He never thought he would find them in this place. He wonders if this is their territory. He doesn't know if they are trying to break the barrier because they invaded his home. It was only a matter of time before they broke it. He had to do something to stop them. With this in mind, he prepares to interact with them. He says his name is Hanjul. He asks who is the leader of this place. One of the men stands in front, says his name is Meltaji, and asks where the owner of the sword 100 lays. He asks why he is looking for him. Meltaji tells him that this is not a place he can easily access. Only the owner of the sword could open it. If he doesn't answer their questions, he will split his head. The protagonist tells him that he cannot easily respond because he doesn't know what they will do to the owner of the sword. The guy says he will find him and punish him. The ancient promised them that a worthy man would come with the sword, so they had to wait, but he never came to them. He doesn't know what is happening behind the scenes. But it seems that the man with the 7-armed sword was allowed to come to this place. That they lost the hilt along the way because the promise was not fulfilled. Their previous leader was disappointed and fell ill. So the guy who possesses the sword must be punished. He orders immediately that they take him away, as the current leader will crush his head. Meltaji asks him if he has ever seen a red bear. He asks if he's one of their own. He says that they asked him to open the barrier and come out. That after not paying attention to them, and believing himself to be the owner of the world, the current leader came and locked him up. These words make him angry. He tries to calm down. He must act in the best way to rescue his friend. He says that he is currently the owner of the sword, but he doesn't believe him because he looks like a weakling. He is too short and seems like he has never fought, and they wonder if he is really a man. They had insulted him, but they gave him the possibility to leave if he didn't interfere with what they were doing. He was underestimating him. He had no reason to hold back. Using the fan, he unleashes the power of his divine beast and terrifies them a bit. Although he doesn't harm them at all, it's just psychological torture. The leader of the guys pleads with him not to continue with this. They tell him about their leader. They say that he's the best so for using the club. But he doesn't believe that's enough to subdue his friend. So he asks them to be as honest as possible. The one in charge says they have a treasure called the purple golden gore. He asks what abilities it has, and someone tells him he doesn't need to know. Their leader had presented herself. Apparently she was a pretty strong girl. Her name was Sudum. We'll call her Jana. She scolds her people for losing so easily, and as punishment, she sends them to reflect inside her bottle for at least 10 years. This bottle apparently is the purple golden gourd. Careful, since she's the boss, he wonders what kind of powers she might have. So the beast tries to spray her with the red bean porridge she used on her men. She seems undisturbed by this and avoids it. She says that was a pretty obvious attack. She doesn't know how she could win against her tribe, but her tactics won't work on her. She invokes multiple ghosts, and along with her club gets ready to battle. This was an absurd amount of power. She was a powerful enemy, so it would be better to defeat her immediately. He couldn't let time run. The mutual attack was about to happen. The power of the Fen, the multiple ghosts, and even the shinobi's ability meet. Both were putting on a majestic battle in her eyes. This was impressive. The power of words comes into play. The battle was becoming more intense. Hanjul remembers something about the goblins, that they can do almost anything using a secret skill in a club, which seems to be cheating. Wanta commented that it wasn't like that. The goblins had the ability to embody the image of their owner's imagination, meaning they can imagine something and transform into it. But for some reason, they don't understand the concept of keeping information in their heads and move on instinct. He was born with remarkable physical abilities and an immortal physique. If they had a bit more intellect, the world would have been under their control. The imagination of the boss was above normal goblins who only made low-quality access. She was really different. She can handle the divine beast with ease. He didn't know what to do at this point, and he wondered if he had to use his trump card. She asks him what he's doing and barely can counter her strike. She asks if he has too much time to pay attention to other things and not focus on the battle ahead. Using one of the skills he learned from the shinobi, he manages to separate from her. She charges her weapon with great power and sends ghosts at the hero again. He tries to endure this no matter what, but he's cornered. Jana asks him if he's at his limit, because if so she's ready to end the battle. She sends her ghosts and asks him to beg for her forgiveness. Everything is against him at this moment. She thought there would be no escape, and now all that's left is for him to scream. Hanjul asks her what's so funny that makes her smile, so he summons assistants with lots of red beans, in which he tries to bathe her while screaming. She gets trapped in the bottle and he lets her taste a bit of her own medicine. He doesn't know how to use this artifact, but he manages to get his companion out. Gwanak embraces him and says he knew he would come to save him. For him, it was torture to be in this place. And the protagonist apologizes for not coming quickly. He asks how much time has passed when it tells him that the time is similar to the outside world, and it's been about 150 days. He prepares to leave this place. But before that he lets the goblins out and asks the boss where the seven-armed sword is. She's not willing to tell him. She tells him the same thing as the previous goblins. He's short and doesn't have a big build, which makes him quite angry. She admits her mistake and says that this isn't important. Her mother had told her something that she found quite ridiculous. He was able to defeat her and he's quite strong. He doesn't look so bad. So she asked him to be her husband. This leaves him speechless. When I could only think that this event wasn't so bad. And since there was no other adult, he might have to officiate the marriage. On his part, Hanjul asks Waynak what she means by him being her husband. Waynak asks if he hasn't heard that the goblins are tied to the seven-armed sword. This is when he remembers something. The king had promised that a person with a sword would come to them, and he would be worthy enough to fight the boss. Thinking it over, he wonders if all this had to do with the marriage in the first place. If the sword-bearer could defeat the tribe's boss, he could get a wife. This was something he hadn't foreseen, but it had nothing to do with him. The person who had made the promise had perished a long time ago, and the marriage was supposed to take place with the daughter of that time's boss. Although she wasn't very agreeable with these words, because she already considered him her husband. This wasn't the time for this. He didn't know whether to accept or not, but the offer was quite tempting. He changes the subject and asks where it is the sword of the 7 arms. If she didn't tell him, he would make her eat beans until her stomach burst. She didn't want to tell him. She was quite stubborn and wasn't willing to say anything. She would only do it when she gave birth to 3 strong babies. He remained unmoved by these words and made her swallow the beans. When I told him he didn't think this method would work. Goblins are notoriously stubborn and do not change their minds easily. He asked if there was any reason not to marry, and he as his friend agreed to marry them. Apparently, these goblins were trapped in this place, and only the young ones remained, but they shouldn't be taken lightly, as he himself witnessed what they can do. Even the pumpkin bottle they possessed was a high-quality treasure. They were a tribe with a high-grade treasure, so they might have extraordinary backgrounds. He was an immortal who had reached a high level, so he would live for at least hundreds of years. After 100 or 200 years, the tribe would become something that no one could ignore. These words echoed in his mind. He had an irregular physique, so there was a possibility that something could go wrong at any moment. As he had said, these were not something to be ignored. He had to win them over somehow, rather than threaten them. That's when an idea occurred to him. He scolded her a bit for tying her up. She asked what he was doing now. In front of her were 2 plates of food, and she wondered what those things were. Jenna realized she was awake, but she said she wouldn't speak until they were married. He said he would think about it while having some snacks. This left her astonished. He said all sorts of things to make her want to eat. She couldn't hold back any longer and told him she wanted to eat. He gave her a test, and this left her fascinated, even asking for more. But this is when his true plan came to light. He ate all the snacks in one bite. She stuck to her plan that they should marry and have 3 children. She still had 2 left on the plate, so she lowered her offer to just 2 children, 1 boy and 1 girl. He played dominate 1, so she lowered the offer again. She just wanted a girl. When he was about to eat the last one, she couldn't hold back and asked him to be her husband only. He said it was fine, but they would only marry when he decided, as he couldn't afford to do it right now. She asked if that meant he would never marry her. He said she could rest assured they would marry in 100 years, as that was nothing for his race. He offered her the leftover snacks and said he would teach her how to cultivate the ingredients to make them. She asked if this was his wedding gift, and he said yes. He thought that in 120 years, maybe she wouldn't want him. He thought the introduction of this girl would be bad, but with so much time there could be good character development. She summoned a chest, and he asked if it was a treasure chest. She commented that her mom left it for her. She looked inside and handed him something. This was her wedding gift. Apparently, it was a bundle, although it didn't look like much to him. Waynick knew the weight of this treasure. He asked if what was in his hands was really a valuable item. He remembered a story about a bundle and an old guanac. He had also heard the story and asked if he knew that the main character was an artist who dominated the Korean peninsula in the past. This left him quite surprised. There are people with outstanding abilities that goblins try to take from them. They are greedy beings. One of the things they created is a technique that allows a person to exchange something intangible like talent for other things. However, people with exceptional abilities will not be limited to giving up their talents. That's why goblins used bundles to make humans suffer. And for them to end this suffering, they had to give up their talents. That's why the bundle was so precious. He had to hurry and accept it. He thought carefully. If they were really good, he should accept them. He called Jonna, and she told him he could call her the bride from now on. He asked her if she knew where these bundles were obtained. She said her grandmother got them before going to the Korean peninsula. Apparently this was during the reign of Goya Bongo. She said the owner of that bundle was a doctor heading to the West District. The doctor was known for his medicine and acupuncture. He also traveled the world and was a strong and impatient person. He grew up in prison. After insisting on treating an incurable disease, he told her grandmother he would give her the bundle in exchange for secretly feeding him. Despite the danger she was exposed, wasn't herself to by doing so. Jenna asked if that meant he could make medicines. He was worried because he couldn't make medicines directly. The other bundle was from a powerful man. It was said that he was good at weapons and horseback riding, but he attracted death due to his overflowing arrogance. He was sent to war. and when the situation became difficult, he gave his grandmother the bundle in exchange for rescuing his beloved from the battlefield and sending her to a distant place. It was the first time this guy had lost something. Hanjul thought for a moment. The bundles weren't damaged, and he would feel bad if he didn't take them. Although the second person didn't quite fit with him, Jana had already finished eating, so she told him it was time for her to receive a punishment. She got into position to give him a good hit. She wanted to aim for his head. He thought it would hurt a lot, but it turned out she only wanted to stick the bundle to him. He said he didn't feel any different. Jenna commented that he shouldn't worry. When he found himself in a situation where he needed to use his new talents, they would appear. It was time to take out the sword. Gwanak told him that treasures like these had certain egos, and this sword in particular had a rather high one. Furthermore, the one he possessed was made of wood and shouldn't be taken lightly. There was compatibility and incompatibility among the 5 elements. In this case, the sword was incompatible with the element gold, and he shouldn't pressure himself. Even with all these words, he was willing to try. He took the sword's hilt, and immediately, his power overflowed from it. It wasn't something he could handle easily. Gwanak asked him not to force himself, as the sword was very powerful. His face showed concern, but the protagonist wasn't willing to give up. The sword's ego had awakened and told him he was just a little fool, who was actually desperate for more power. Hanjul wasn't willing to give up, even with everything against him. The sword's cutting sigh had disappeared. He couldn't believe it possessed so much energy. Hanjul had actually disciplined the sword. Gwanak of course heard stories of how ordinary Bongo people who became Celestials conquered opponents only by willpower, but he never expected that Hanjul would be able to subdue the 7-pointed sword. From time to time he turned his admiring glance from the weapon to the young man, Puck himself. Unexpectedly, he had the desire and confidence that he could conquer the sword. But where did such self-confidence come from? Is this the talent of a martial arts master from a lump? Yulia even liked this, clenching his fists tightly, as if thereby driving away indecision along with doubts. He tried to accept his new self, already fearless and full of determination. Well, isn't it time for us to return? The boy suggested and looked at his faithful companion. In principle, for the absence of so far, nothing has changed in the modern world. All the same bright billboards and curtains inviting customers, and a never-ending hormone in which people's voices, the noise of cars and various music merge. While drinking Gwanak juice, I was stunned by the amazing taste of the drink. He smacked his lips with relish and held the nectar bottle even more tightly. And those baked eggs, the little bear simply could not tear himself away from them. In general, human civilization was able to surprise him. You will also want it to enjoy life in a similar sense, but he had to sit down at the computer. The monotonous monitoring of news and information makes him a little bored. After a long time, they returned to Korea and stopped at an internet cafe. After the first use of the sword, Hanjo was full of energy, but by the second time he had practically no energy left. They originally planned to go straight to Mount Gwanaksan, but in the battle with Showdown, he used up too much power. So they had to stop in a town near Mount Gwanaksan. Showdown really wanted to go with her future husband, but fortunately, she has a strong sense of responsibility. After all, she is still the leader of the goblin tribe and must look after them. But before that, Hanjul buzzed everyone's ears that he actually had to keep his promise and return. But something else was important for the young man. It's been 7 months since the Battle of Dokdo, but people are still talking about it. There were a lot of comments on the forums about this. Some even believed that everything that happened was almost some kind of secret conspiracy. Because why are representatives still refraining from answering? Will the Eastern Sea turned into a sea of flames? On the 13th, the leaders of South Korea. Although in essence, this all happens due to the unexpected invasion of the sons of the Dragon King of the Eastern Sea. And almost the main question sounded like this. It's already the 76th day of silence. Why is the King of Dragons silent? Almost immediately, representatives of Bakwa Garden and Alyssa Kami Temple accused the Dragon Palace of interfering in their battle. But the Dragon Palace representative repeated those words and accused them of the opposite. However, after about a month, the Dragon King suddenly began to mac. But then Gwanak himself had a question. Taking a break from the juice as far as his willpower allowed him, he inquired about the Dragon Kings of the Western and Southern Seas. Firstly, they did not express any position. It seems that they are not on the side of the EC. you will suggest it. Decency is clearly being ignored, added the little bear, barely managing to lick the drop of drink that was rolling down. Having finished with her, he continued, although the three dragon kings do not get along very well with each other. They always unite when they encounter people are celestials. I don't think they can easily ignore the EC provocation this time. They have themselves to blame. Listening to his, but then something else caught Honey's attention. Where did the seven-pointed sword go on one of the internet spaces? This particular question was the most liked, commented, and reposted. Beowulf is said to have notified the Northern Council that he would remain on the Korean peninsula and would likely take part in the EC War. Hanjul believed that this was because of the oath he took on Dokdo, because Beowulf is strong enough to drown out the resonance of a seven-pointed sword with one blow. And at the beginning of the battle, he showed this to everyone quite colorfully. We need to be careful as he is looking for a sword flash through the young man's head, but his thoughts were interrupted by the bear cub. DC is completely cornered, even people speak badly of him. Now Gwanak is connected to viewing news sites. On one of them, it was written that Beowulf, who is responsible for the security of Japan, said that he would give his life but would return the seven-pointed sword. The Eastern Sea had long maintained trusting relations with representatives of the Western and Southern Seas, so the news of the guys still had a lot to learn, but unfortunately, their session in the internet cafe was glass. What are you going to do? God of Mount Gwanak asked his two-legged friend about his plans for life. Without much hesitation, Yule answered, "We need to go to Mount Gwanak. Now he is listed as either missing or dead, so if he returns unharmed, he will arouse suspicion." Even now, looking at the other visitors to the cafe, he looked at them with caution. So for now, I decided to calmly observe the situation from the outside. In addition, you need to take care of the peach tree. I also want to go to Mount Gwanak to check the condition of my main body. What worries me is that I no longer feel his energy. A wave of anxiety ran across the bear's face, a sense, and the guy began to worrying about his friend. Since we entered the place where the goblins live, I thought the connection would be restored when we returned, but it seems like something happened to my main body and he looked upset at you, expecting support. In fact, 7 months have passed since his connection with the main body was interrupted. This is very important. Why did you only say this now? Our hero grabbed the bear cub, demanding an explanation from him, and without waiting for his answer, he said that they were leaving for the mountain right now. Clouds floated across the sky. The sun's rays fell through them onto the ground, giving everyone their warmth. Having climbed Mount Gwanak, our guys froze in amazement. Yule took a couple of steps back to make sure that what he was seeing was authentic, and Gwanak grabbed the young man's hair. These are hardworking insects. And now, without putting down their varnish, without stopping, each of them did their job. Someone filled the honeycombs with honey, and someone took care of the larvae. But everything was not so rosy. The beehives, and there were as many as 7 of them, were located on the peach tree, not allowing anyone within the nearest couple of meters. So both comrades decided not to tempt fate, and at first not to approach the tree for the near future. But that's how the bees were able to penetrate the barrier of the peach tree, because it didn't look like the barrier had weakened. Meanwhile, the insects noticed the newly arrived guests and gradually began to attack them. "Strange, very strange," muttered the little bear, jumping from Puck to the ground. Either the bees broke through the barrier, or the tree itself called them. He continued to think out loud, simultaneously raking the ground with his paws. Not only had bees settled on planned on the peach tree, but now Gwanak was acting strangely to himself. However, imagine his surprise when leaves that were not yet completely rotten began to be visible through a small layer of soil. "It can't be," the little friend said a little excitedly, a hushed voice. And now he's already sitting in a hole with leaves, enjoying the aroma and the rustling of them with all his might. But a few moments later, he stood up as if scalded, and Hanjul eyes whitened. What? On one command, without saying a word, they asked themselves a question together. "Why is your body here? What's happening?" The young man was completely unaware of what was happening. Distracted by Gwanak's main body, they did not notice how more and more bees became interested in their appearance. The little bear loved honey very much, but he really didn't like bees, and Yule could not even have imagined that insects would one day become his enemy. Now they were not interested in what happened to the main body of Gwanak. Now they were interested in why suddenly the bees became larger, almost the size of an ordinary person. But they had no time to think, because the insects began to attack them. Hanjul barely managed to get his treasured pipe and the secret scroll of Yatagosu. I sincerely hope that they will be able to survive. Another millisecond and iron cannons, in the form of demonic heads, were summoned into this world. The young man commanded shoot, and the bullets flew like a hail at the bees, accurately hitting their targets. But as soon as one bee was knocked down, a new healthy bee took its place. The demonic heads continued to shoot, but the bees still did not end. Even iron cannons couldn't cope. We urgently need to come up with something. Yul became thoughtful and even began to chew the end of the pipe little by little. Suddenly, there were several dozen fewer bees. It was Guana, who turned from a cute little bear into a huge roaring bear. Fueled by the energy of his main body, he became bigger and the earth shook from his power. The bees fell dead to the ground. Hanjul tried to stop the god of Quantex on mountain, but he objected to him that it was easy to finish them off with fire. But I can hook both the nests in the peach tree. The bear's roar was heard through the roar of the bees, after which he continued to advance so that the bees would not attack again. And the nests on the tree were still full of winged insects. Is there another way? Guanak asked with hope in his eyes. The young man thought about it. A safe way to kill bees without affecting the tree is not an easy task. And are there any other options at all? Suddenly, one thought pierced the consciousness of our hero like an arrow. He began to look closely at the bees whose strength began to dry up and they fell lifelessly onto the plant carpet. But why are they dead, if they have no wounds? What did he do that made them die en masse? Another moment and the young man understood their reason for the mass killing. However, if you are still wondering what happened to the main body of Guanak, then I will tell you actually everything was fine. If something happens to the main body, the copies can restore it. But he deliberately scared his two-legged friend because scaring him is fun, especially if you also watch his face. It's there that such a range of emotions and feelings plays out. As soon as Pak realized that he had been fooled, he immediately called headaches so that they could take a walk together. Naturally, despite the bear cout, even if the sun had set, there would still be light on the mountain from the fire, which was getting closer and closer to the peach tree. Suddenly Guanaco was called out. The bear turns the call. Step aside. You will shout it to him, the top of his voice hastily pulling out a red bag from his pocket. As soon as the bear stepped aside, a handful of nicotine balls flew towards the peach tree, which the young man always carried with him in order to refresh himself at any time. While still in flight, the balls began to burn, and at the same time spread nicotine from which the bees began to die. The insects realized that they could not be in this place and hurried to leave this house. But a human hand managed to stick the fan of the nine-tailed fox into the ground, and the barrier closed. The bees tried to get through it, but they couldn't. Then they turned around and tried to find a way out, but they couldn't find it because the poisonous smoke gradually began to take effect. And even the strongest winged ones gradually began to fall. Yul and Guanak finally took a deep breath of fresh air. They were happy from the realization that they managed to go beyond the barrier. I still don't understand where they came from. The bear cub was the first to speak. He remembered the story in which the golden queen bee grew something called the grim bomb on the mountain, and also the golden queen bee, which is the name of a fairy in Chinese mythology. She is also known as the fairy of the elixir of immortality. It turns out, Puck didn't finish looking questioningly at the bear. But it's been a long time since she was last seen. There is no reason for her to show up now. Guanak was loudly indignant. Well, if you think about it, this is a peach tree, a symbol of youth and immortality, the tree of life. The young man said, looking over the barrier. The little bear couldn't find an answer. So perhaps there are still living bees left from them. They could have lived in another place, maybe in another dimension entirely. But when they smelled the peach tree, they flew in. The guy continued to reason, quite possible. Delving into his conclusion, the god of Mount Quantex and agreed with Hai. Since we figured out how to get rid of the bees and the smoke has already cleared the rested. Hanjul began to get to his feet, pissing himself off, and at the same time his friend. Maybe we'll go inside, he suggested to Guanaco. The smoke is already cleared and only a slight burning smell remains in the air. The young man took one of the beehives from the tree, cutting it in half. Juicy honey immediately poured out of the honeycomb. Incredible, this is an unusual honey. It is full of yang energy. If you eat it, your body will be filled with strength. Guana commented on the deliciousness, barely having time to swallow his saliva. Hanjul will also looked at this miracle of nature with both eyes, after which he gave the other half to the bear's disposal. Gwanak was in seventh heaven because he would now be able to taste such a delicious thing. But Yulum, like his comrade, was not in such a hurry to taste the delicacy to begin with. He decided to examine the external data of the product. I also expected that the honey from the peach tree would be. However, he did not hesitate. The young man remembered that Gumajin Nan mentioned in his book that there were many useful things, and he hoped to find one of them here. Therefore, I ran my fingers through the honeycombs in the hive a little excitedly, but his heart beat joyfully. He found what he was looking for, or rather the hundreds with larvae. The bear cub was already enjoying himself with all his might, but Hanjul had not even tasted the honey yet. He kept thinking, since they are alive, wouldn't it be better to move them to another place? There are a lot of useful substances here that will help with further growth. Our hero continued to think. Having picked up a suitable twig, he began to wield it like a fork, scoop up a small portion of the final product of the bee's painstaking work. The main question that interested the young man was what effect would this honey give? Not a second later, he immediately popped a piece of honeycomb into his mouth. The substance was taken. The active ingredient was royal jelly. Puck hadn't even had time to swallow before it had already begun to clear his head and filled his body with strength. His growth abilities increased, but he immediately hid, barely suppressing the desire to spit everything back out. Since it's honey, I thought it would be sweet. The young man remarked out loud. What the little bear was dissatisfied with the fact that he was distracted from an extremely important matter even for a second, but he immediately stopped short, examining the young man more closely, after which he was surprised to tell his two-legged friend that his head was glowing, and she really shined in the field of claims. Exactly to such beautiful balls of light made their way through the regrown strands of hair. These two spots were on top, and their carrier could not see them. Under the instructions of the bear cub, you will quickly found their location, and it did not escape Quantuk's eyes that in fact, it was the horns that were glowing. Oh, this karma, he joked with Hanjo about his main body, and he hid from him that he had horns. Amazing. The walking number. Vicky has seen a lot of things in this life, but he saw human horns for the first time. With a shout, "Why are they on your head?" Gwanak jumped back a couple of meters. "They grew after I swallowed the pearl," Hanjul explained in one sentence. "How is this connected? Don't talk nonsense. You won't turn into a bear if you eat beef suit for 3 days, will you?" The bear cub continued to be indignant, but the young man decided not to stop there and finally finish off his friend. "Oh, I have something else strange on my body. I noticed this when I was changing clothes," and lowered the top of the kimono from his right shoulder, exposing his chest and upper abdomen on which a bluish turquoise spot was. When Quantuk's first shock passed, he began to think all this was very strange, and most importantly, why did it appear? Maybe it's because of the dragon pearl, suggested the owner of the unique base. Not so simple. The bear cub broken off on the floor. Dragons are born from water, and after many years of training, they are reborn. However, human nature is different. To become stronger, they use other methods, but you became a dragon. Even though you were a human before, I don't even know what to say. You have become a real monster. Fearing for the life of his comrade, the four-legged friend was worried. His last phrase echoed through the young man's ears. "Now it will be difficult for you to live like an ordinary person." Gwanak continued to upset. "If I had the opportunity, then I would not have swallowed the pearl," Talk snapped. However, it turned out that the horns and scales of a dragon have their advantages. If you had looked closely at them at the moment when he ate the honey, he could have noticed that the dragon parts had grown. But if he were an ordinary person, he would not receive any special benefits. Who knows? Maybe one day you can become a real dragon, Gwanak stated the hypothesis. "I wonder if my beard and tail will grow by then," the boy thought for a moment. Become a real dragon. He didn't even know whether it was good or bad, whether it scared him, or whether it made them happy. Leaving my thoughts behind, I looked again. The cut-up hive. At least once the horns have responded, then it is worth eating royal jelly regularly. If you leave the larvae alone, over time they will grow on their own. And when this succeeds, it will be possible to collect more royal jelly. A business plan almost matured, Dinpuk said. And while the larvae are growing, I want to master a new technique. The young man thought out loud again. What? Our hero's ambitions gradually began to frighten the little bear. You'll consider himself very lucky. After all, the first elixir, he absorbed was Gongcheng extract, which contained the energy of nature. Originally, it had an inexplicable basis, that after studying the techniques she changed because of this. He only has to absorb elixirs that have the wood attribute, which in turn is not very effective. There are only 5 attributes: Wo, fire, earth, metal, water. All of them are a kind of cycle where something is combined with another and vice versa. Therefore, if he learns techniques with other attributes, he may be able to absorb other elixirs. This is a good idea. Where are you going to get other techniques? Guanak haste. The young man do you have them? Tuck smiled smugly, and he took out a couple of notebooks and a scroll from his red bag. To the Guanak, one Axon Mountain was even surprised. How could he forget about such things? The techniques that the students told Janine and Nokia chosen one head, together with the scroll of the psychology family, at the shinobi head together formed a fairly powerful textbook of knowledge. Puck suggested that since they still have to hide, maybe they should try them. The little bear agreed with him, after which he was curious about where exactly he would start. The young man's hand fell on the scroll. I think this would be perfect. Shinobi technique. The young adventurer delivered his verdict. He already had 3 objects that had the attribute of metal, including a 7-pointed sword. Well done. I planned everything myself. Since we're in a safe place, you can begin to. Guanak pushed him without any hesitation. He was proud of his comrade's intelligence. By the way, something is bothering me here. Yuel began to share his experiences with him. The object of his concern turned out to be a jade bowl. I couldn't get it. Is there a way to contact Demdok? The former owner of the inexplicable basis asked with hope in his voice. So what if it didn't work out for you? I don't understand why this bothers you at all. Why not? Could not understand the reason for the excitement. Now our hero did not understand his friend's reaction. Or rather, his strongly frowning. Muzzle Tove, why so serious? He demanded an explanation. You need to learn to look at the world more broadly. Guanak taught the young men a lesson. I know what a flute is. Do you really think that if they get it, all their problems will be solved immediately? There was no need to put your life in danger for the sake of the first person you meet. Crossing his arms, he almost made a claim against him. Hanjul thought about it. Of course the little bear was right, but the memories of that trip with Demdok told him otherwise. But Guanak did not want to listen to anything. You're still so young. Don't be stupid. You can always find a person who will do everything for you. His words must have had a great influence on Yul, since he immediately began to look for suitable candidates for this role. Wow. Guanak, so you know someone who can help with this. The young man attacked the god of Mount Guanak's son. The little bear closed his mouth with all his might and immediately regretted his above words. What a rich, even if you get a flute you still won't use it, but give it to Demdok. He was already starting to scream, but he immediately calmed down under Puck's calm and decisive statement. No, I actually wanted to keep this flute for myself. What? Guanak froze on one leg, wondering if you heard everything correctly. You're not lying, are you? He looked suspiciously at his comrade. True. I will never give her to brother Damdiok. He tried his best to make the bear cub believe him. He thought something like this: why should he give it to someone else if he himself can use the flute against the dragon's palace? Ultimately, the result will be the same. After some time of thinking about this proposal, the little bear agreed to help him with the flute. Hooray, 1AK! You are the best. Happy you will scream joyfully. The master with whom he will the bear wanted to introduce is called Guadav Jingwen. This man has been serving his older sister and nephew for a long time, so now they both need to get to Mount Kovolson. Kovolson, Puck asked, as if trying this new word to taste. Next, he was interested in the location of the mountain. Perhaps you don't even know about her. This mountain is located in North Korea. The little bear turned on the geographer. In North Korea, the young man of course loved to travel, but he never thought that he would be brought to this country. Wait a minute, in the North, bear sister. This reminds me of some story. The young man slowly began to remember, forming some kind of strange puzzle in his head. Guanak, what is your sister's name? He asked a little insinuatingly. She doesn't have a name. I, as the spirit of the mountain, inherited her name, but my sister is not a spirit. The bear cub began the story about her pedigree. As for his nephew, he's usually called Tengen Wang, along with Lady Yuna. He was one of the 3 leaders who ruled the entire Korean peninsula. He still rules Arthal near Mount Kowalson in Yellow River Province. Time has passed in the province of Hwang Hainando near Mount Kowalson. Bad weather raged. The rain fell and heavy drops to the ground, generously giving it heavenly water. Park Hanyul still couldn't believe that he was in North Korea. However, life is unpredictable and time after time, we have to deal with something we never expected. Standing at the foot of the hills, he looked at Mancave Olsen. She was much better, more beautiful, looked more powerful and majestic than from all the stories of people who saw them combined. It truly deserves to be called the sacred mountain of our people, thought the young man, but he immediately began to turn his head from side to side, examining the area and trying to find their purpose of visit to Arstal. Don't have your head in the clouds, and I pulled him away from extraneous thoughts, only no longer in the form of a cute little bear, but in the ordinary human form of a red-haired youth with a long red braid up to his waist. He also wore a blue kimono. When will we arrive? Puck complained tiredly. Still, after all, walking in the rain without an umbrella is not a pleasant feeling. So we have already arrived. Let's hasten to please our friend Rajik. What? Yuel couldn't believe his eyes and even moved away the mask of some demon hanging to his side in order to get a better look. In principle, there was nothing to look at except for two huge columns carved from stone standing opposite them, at the top of which huge male heads could be seen. In some places, cracks were visible on them, and in some places the stone had broken off. Who you are? Arthal does not accept uninvited guests, one of the heads said to the newly arrived travelers. Trying to shout about the thunder, Gwanak replied, "Tell her that the red bear from Mount Gwanakson has come to her," and was ready to repeat what was said again. Gwanak, please wait a second. The tone of the head immediately changed. Now he was calmer and, even to some extent, generously pleasant. Come on quickly and take off your disguise, the red-haired youth urged him. Hanjul took her breath away. All the time he perceived Gwanak as an ordinary bear, but now his friend looked so noble, noticing the admiration of the dragon. The one in the form of a bear cub proudly straightened his shoulders, saying, "Look who is your servant." But why disguise this? Thought haunted Puck. If Gwanak stood as if nothing had happened, then Yuel could barely stay on his feet. The young man suddenly felt dizzy, but then his breath caught and his throat went dry from surprise and admiration. Now these were not just small or large clearings between the trees. Among them were hidden entire squares and houses of amazing architecture. Despite the rain, the market was lively. People were selling their goods with might and main, and the kids happily ran back and forth frolicking. The village is hidden behind a barrier. It turns out there are all these people. Puck didn't finish. No, not everyone here is a celestial. Before Arstal hid himself from the world, we received those who wished to stay, although one of the conditions stated that all rights to life and death would belong. Heaven on earth under the rule of the great leader really is in the north. True, the leader is completely different, Yuel thought sarcastically, but he immediately grabbed his mask with both hands and pulled it over his face, barely managing to hide it from the small company of people approaching them. Or rather, three male adolescents. The one in front was dressed in armor and, in his left hand, he tightly clutched a spear. The two other guys on either side of him were dressed in a white kimono with burgundy trim. All three bowed their heads. "Greetings, sir," the guy in armor greeted. The red-haired man, without saying hello in return, immediately asked where his sister was. "She awaits you in the abode of grace. By the way, who is that person behind you?" Asked for the safety of the village to reveal the identity of the stranger. Gwanak looked at Yuel and, turning to Trinity, explained that he was his servant and could be trusted well. "Please come in," having thrown away unnecessary questions. Those who greeted invited the guests to their monastery. The rain did not stop. Trinity walked ahead of everyone, showing the way, followed by the redhead, and Puck closed the procession. Suddenly the soldiers stopped, and we arrived and summed up the wars. If Yuel had already mentally prepared to contemplate the art of architecture, but he did not expect what appeared before his eyes. They were at the foot of the stone mountain at the entrance to the cave. The only decoration was to read penance on both sides of the entrance. She is in such a wilderness. Why should she be here if there is a magnificent palace over there? Looking in the opposite direction, Hanjul could not understand. But then the drum rolled and she came out of the thick of the trees. The warriors bowed their heads before her in complete silence. The girl looked terribly like her younger brother. The same bright red hair, petite but strong body, facial features, and bright brown eyes. Anyo. This is exactly the name the girl had. You will notice that she was very different from Lady Yuna, even though they had the same godmother. "You are so busy, but you still brought my younger brother," the girl thanked the guards. "What are you talking about? This is our job." "Well, it's time for us." We'll leave you, after which they left, and in the nearest diameter, there was no one except the three of them on Yo standing opposite Gwanak and Hanjul. Located behind him a couple of meters from him, the girl's eyes became sad. Perhaps she even cried, but the rain did not allow it to be seen. For a long time, no see, she remarked sadly. Most likely, the younger brother also felt something similar, but he tried not to show it. Indeed, a very long time ago, the girl continued, but she no longer had the strength to hide her Joe, even though he was the youngest. She loved this little asshole to bits and of course attacked him with hugs, trying not to crush him in her arms. It's been so long since we've seen each other, little one. How could you be gone for so long? It was too long, the girl wailed. Sister Gwanak tried to free himself from her nimble hands, but he failed. Honey will only remain to watch what was happening from the side, but he thought that this was a bee. You have come a long way to return, so get some rest. So the sister Gwanak didn't even have time to react. How he immediately felt sleepy and O's arms. You will didn't know what to expect. If she put him to sleep, then why? For what purpose? And he was about to reach into the bag for his treasures. Don't worry, I just put him to sleep for a while. The girl tried to calm down her brother's servant. The young man was embarrassed and quickly began to put the younger girls to scroll back. I hope I didn't embarrass you with my behavior. This child is my only blood relative left from the time when I became the successor of Grace. The girl explained such an emotional manifestation of her feelings. But she immediately leaned forward from under her forehead looking at the arriving guest. And therefore answer me, why does the dragon claim to be my brother's servant? There was a short pause. Yul swallowed, then took off his mask and showed his true human face. Probably not a dragon, it would be more correct to say monster. He corrected the girl's statement, and looking straight into her eyes he allowed him to look straight into his soul. The rain was still pouring incessantly. The trio took refuge in a cozy gazebo. The thicket of trees and bushes almost completely covered her from unnecessary voices. The girl and the boy were chatting pleasantly, or rather only Puck and Onyo listened to his story, tenderly tugging at the hair on his sleeping brother's head. And that's how we ended up here. The young man had already told his whole story, and the bear cub dear to his heart and human form was still snoring. I see. The girl sighed somehow sadly. There was not exactly awkward but still silence. After a short pause, she expressed her concern about the fact that he told her everything up to the point of becoming a celestial. Doesn't he think she heard too much? Ewell shook his head from side to side. Gwanak is well aware of my position, but despite this, he still brought me here. True, I had to hide my identity. And you'll continue to listen to him silently. And this means that he trusts you. In the last sentence he seemed to ask the girl to read something else between the lines. And you are perceptive. The owner of Grey smiled quietly. However, the Hanjul are looking for is not here. Sister Gwaniko reported not very good news for you. What the young man definitely didn't expect this. He came here, traveled a long way, got wet in the rain, and all in order to find out that one of Jinglin is not here. As it turned out, the required master has not lived in us at all for quite some time. He has this character trait, he doesn't like crowded places. This explanation alone did not make Hanjul will feel any better. Since you took care of my younger brother, he will make you a flute if you prepare a small gift. The girl gave hope. The former owner of the inexplicable basis was so worried, but everything went much better than he thought. But then one thought suddenly dawned on him. If one blockchain goon has not lived in us at all for a long time, then Gwanak should have known about it. Why did he decide to come here? You will raise his inquisitive eyes to new. Finally, you understand? The older sister smiled. What? Puck asked her. He planned to ask you to join us at Dull. This statement sounded like a bolt from the blue. Although now the weather was already raging. Now the young man felt about the same when the goblin leader proposed that they both get married. Or more precisely, so that you take the throne, which will soon be vacated, as a member of our clan. The girl explained. A throne that will soon be vacated. The spoken words echoed in the guy's mind. He remembered how Gwanak in the form of a bear while drinking juice. Noticed that the Eastern Sea was clearly being ignored. Is this really the throne of the Dragon King of the Eastern Sea? While Yule was in thought, she looked at him watching his reaction, and she liked this representative of the dragons more and more. Meanwhile, a kind of palenka was flying between heaven and earth, only the small flying house had only the carrying poles at the back. In it sitting opposite each other, Lady Yunwei and Diok were waiting for the arrival at the place they needed. The man was completely immersed in his thoughts, and they were clearly not pleasant. But later Yunuel brought him out of the state, asking what was wrong with him. Nothing, he only answered. Were you not satisfied with the meeting of leaders? And the woman continued to draw Diok into the conversation. Didn't you want to lead the offensive against the Eastern Sea? Questions rained down on the commander's head, as if from a bag. Looking away, the man agreed that yes, that was the case. After all, when the sons of the Dragon King of the Eastern Sea disrupted the battles of Dokdo, they caused significant damage on land. Because of their actions, a huge number of innocent people died. And this is exactly what Dendiak cannot forgive. Whatever it costs him, they will be punished. However, he still had doubts and was not entirely sure of his actions. Madam, even if this is so but children, he began to talk about this topic. What kind of nonsense are you talking about? Lady Yuna interrupted him. Have you already forgotten that they are our enemies and we must destroy everyone without exception? If you mention this again, I will remove you from your role as commander. She ran into her subordinate. Dendiak had no choice but to humbly bow his head and agree with her opinion. But now the ruler herself was lost in her thoughts. New Dragon King. The reason they brought this up at the leadership meeting is because if the vacant seat was taken by a puppet of one of the factions, the consequences could be disastrous. Fortunately for her, dragons are rare, so it will not be easy for them to find a suitable candidate. Lady Yuna can't let someone else take advantage of this opportunity, and therefore, she needs to find a dragon as soon as possible that she can control. The task was not an easy one. That the woman who had been in power for so many years for her own benefit was absolutely sure that she could find a way out of this situation. They were already getting closer and closer to the location they needed. For example, at the moment, they were flying past a super modern city built by human civilization. And on Mount Colson, where our hero was, the rain still did not stop. Senior, I have a request for you. Please help me leave Aceto quietly so that no one finds out that I'm a dragon. You'll turn to his friend's older sister for help. But she did not understand his decision. After all, if he comes to the throne of the Dragon King, then it will be much easier for him to achieve his goal. Even if I ascend the throne as a member of Aceto, I will become a simple puppet, and I don't want someone else to control my life. Clear moral principles were heard in Parkhill's words. Having collected all my pride, I shoved it far away. He bowed before the owner of grace. If possible, he would like to ask her for advice on his next steps, because he doubts that among the Celestials, he is unlikely to be lucky enough to meet someone who will decide to help him. Therefore, he very much asks her to give him advice. Nice to hear that. I think your brother will be saddened by your separation. The girl smiled sadly. The young man raised his head. What do you have in mind? His back was covered with cold draughts. The verdict was simple. She would no longer allow Gwanak to leave their lands. When there a long time ago, my brother had to leave us at all. Although I resisted this with all my might, she gently ruffled a hair of the sleeping young man. He still became the divine guardian of Gwadak Sand Mountain, but ultimately lost everything and became like this. She said the last words very quietly, as her thoughts became more and more immersed in memories. So you want to exchange Gwanak for helping me? You'll decided to call everything by its proper name. No, I wouldn't let my brother go. Even if you didn't ask me for anything, the girl explained her actions. And by the way, the throne on which a dragon can sit is not only in the seas, in places where a large amount of water energy is concentrated. A throne can also form communicating with a guest Thonyo simultaneously, called one of the maids. Although the level of such talents is lower than C1's, their energy is still quite pure. And I just know about one such person, continued the owner of grace. Meanwhile, the maid entered the gazebo lowering a small scroll on a wooden tray before her master. I had a close relationship with the Dragon King who lived nearby, and when his line was interrupted, I inherited the rights to his lands. I will give them to you and you can take the throne. Of course it is not as good as the C1, but this will be enough for you. This place is ideal for you to calmly build up your strength without worrying about strangers. The girl suggested showing off the favorable conditions for you. Looking at all this, the young man decided that he should probably leave before Gwanak woke up. Although he would like to say goodbye and hug this wonderful young man a couple more times. I will never forget what you did for me, Gwanak. The young man tried his best to hold back the tears coming to his eyes. But he knew that sooner or later changes happen in this life. And when something new comes, It displaces the old. 3 days have passed. Hanyul did not lie when she said that the place of the former Dragon King was nearby. Now Hanjul decided to pause in order to admire the view that opened before him. And the energy was in no way inferior to the extraordinarily beautiful nature of this place. The young man could not believe that the throne was located on outpack to one of the sacred symbols of the Korean people. The young man decided that first he needed to absorb the water core of this lake, and full of determination he rushed into the abyss of the watery space. Yul was surprised to notice that he could easily swim and breathe underwater. He felt as if he had become a fish. Is this possible because he is now a dragon? Even now being tens of kilometers underwater, he could not believe that a boy from the modern world would be doing something like this at 23 years old. After a short time of searching, he finally found what he was looking for. It was hidden under numerous stones, layers of silt and sand. It was incredible power. Only as it approached, Puck could already feel the power filling him. I wonder how strong it will become if it absorbs the core. Carefully, as if you were approaching the greatest jewel of this world, the young man began to approach. Step by step our hero came closer and closer, and the core like a second sun underwater glowed more and more with each step. And so he extended his hand trying to tame the water force hidden under the shell. But it resisted. The young man prayed to the gods that he would succeed. And with the words, "I will consume you," he rushed to the core using all his strength to achieve what he wanted. The energy in the core heated up, a small explosion of resistance occurred, and it was absorbed. The young man admired his determination. The emotions he felt could not be expressed in words. Plus, he felt strange. It looked like the core had merged with the dragon pearl. As it descended along his body, Yul ran his hand over his chest, feeling that it was gradually descending. But then something distracted him from his thoughts. He turned his face to the sky trying to understand what was wrong. But then the words of Julio previously spoken in the gazebo came to his aid. Soon after you remove the barrier, Imugi will appear that will feel this energy. They trained a lot to become dragons. They will be difficult opponents for you. Angel remembered her words well. But still, these guys came much earlier than he thought. And without hesitating for a second, he rose to the surface of the lake at the speed of light. A huge dragon hovered right above him, but nevertheless, it had the features of snakes. But no matter who the enemy was, Yul was not going to give up so easily and was ready to fight to the last, even if it would cost him enormous strength. Full of confidence, Hanyul will prepare to attack. But the dragon did not give up its positions. The attack of the 7-pointed sword was easily repelled by the flying serpent. It took a lot of effort for the young man not to fly a couple of tens of meters away from the scene of the incident. The atmosphere between the rivals became so tense that lightning began to electrify in the air and bad weather raged on the lake. There were 2 of them opponents. One of them really looked more like a flying turquoise blue snake than a dragon, and the other looked like a mutant brown fish and an incomprehensible monster. However, they were dragons. Strong opponents, you're right, my brother. Although I sense the dragon energy, this nonsense could not withstand even one blow. In any case, there is absolutely nothing left for us to become dragons. If we eat it, we will speed up the process. The brown dragon picked up his words. It is not for nothing that they say that if you want to confuse your opponent and force him into a hurry, then you need to confuse him. That's exactly what our hero did, using his power to thrust the sword into the lake as if calling on the power of the peach tree. Hundreds of thousands of petals filled the space. The young man gradually began to realize his plan. Although the uninvited pretenders to the throne did not understand the purpose of such actions, they considered that it was still pointless to resist him. With the words, "Enjoy these petals before you die," the brown dragon prepared to take the life of a young man. I head towards him, simultaneously causing thunder and rain with my partner. Now, in addition to the resisting people on the lake, the power of the peach tree against the water element entered into a struggle among themselves. No matter how unexpected it was, the tree of life won. The dragons did not like the picture that appeared before their eyes. Blue had already decided to put an end to the circus that was playing out, but he left this idea for the next few seconds because Hanjul summoned iron cannons in the form of demonic heads, and meanwhile the rivals were puzzling over what it was. This man repelled both my and your attacks in an instant, my brother. Apparently he has many more tricks up his sleeve, my brother. I think we should retreat immediately. About 3 we leave. It finally dawned on the blue dragon who they were dealing with. Well, while he was making a verdict, The brown one disappeared from his field of vision ahead of his colleague, with the words, "Brother, brother, wait for me." The blue dragon rushed to catch up with the brown one. And the young man looked at them both from below, wondering if it was all over, and they gave up so quickly. But he had no time to think about it, since his health worsened. He used too much strength trying to absorb the core. He is already at his limit, but he can't leave everything like that. It was not for nothing that the former owner of the inexplicable basis received this opportunity in exchange for his dear guanac. Brother, wait. The blue one tried to catch up with his friend. But immediately, in the depths of his soul, he was glad that he was so far behind him. After all, right in front of them, out of nowhere, Paul Hanyl appeared in front of them armed with a 7-pointed sword. Now they were both wondering like hell how miraculously he ended up here. However, they preferred to ask how they could now get out of the situation, because they already understood that their enemy was not just strong, but terribly powerful. The latter conclusion followed from the fact that he surrounded both of them, including himself, with barriers so that they would not have time to escape. Who the hell is he? This was the only question pounding in both of their temples. Without hesitating for a second, the young man rushed to attack. The brown dragon was finally brought down by Hanjul tactics. His eyes did not have time to catch the moments of the young man's movements. Here and there, he struck with a 7-pointed sword, leaving wounds that did not bleed, but were very painful. Everything went exactly according to the young man's just sketch plan of action. And now everything was moving towards the last chord. Gathering all his strength and will into a fist, the young man flew up to the brown dragon from all sides, sticking something like sticks into his body in various places. Blue has already regretted running into this guy 100 times. Where did this man come from? He wondered. And then she asked for forgiveness from her brother, the brown dragon. After all, if he stays here, he will also die, and he needs to escape as quickly as possible. He wanted to become the Dragon King so badly, and now all his years of practice, all his efforts have gone down the drain. Cursing everything in the world, he rushed far away from this terrible place. Where are we in a hurry? Puck, who immediately stood in his way, asked him. The plant with which our hero conquered 2 images is called black Chinese bamboo. Even in ancient times, it was believed that it could be used to fight dragons. If pierced with it, the dragon's body will gradually lose its vitality. Now the defeated friends were tightly tied together. Brother, wake up, brother. Don't you dare fall asleep, otherwise you will die. Tried to bring the other blue one to consciousness. Shut up. You're too nosy. You will interrupted his lamentation. Yes. The dragon humbly bowed his head. Sitting on top of the tied-up guys, Puck was traveling around the lake, and then something caught his attention. At the bottom of the reservoir, various buildings were built, something like a small village. Literally 1 or 2 streets. In addition, here and there flower beds were laid out on which various flowers grew, the shadow of which was covered by mighty trees. Swimming closer, the young man began to examine the architecture. He hadn't seen it here before. Could this be the Dragon Palace? Perhaps he appears when the owner of the water cooler approaches him. Well, we need to look around. The former owner of the inexplicable base came to the conclusion, parking the tie dragons in the square near the building. Before he could move away, the blue dragon called out to him. I will do whatever you say. Just please take out these sticks. I can't stand this pain anymore. The scaly one begged with tears in his eyes. Okay, if you answer my question honestly, then I'll get them, the young man put forward as conditions. But if you lie, you understand what will happen, right? He frowned. Yes, I understood everything. The huge lizard hastened to assure him. The question was extremely simple. If there is anyone else here besides both of them, perhaps you mean those who guard the Dragon Palace. Those 5 are now hiding in their lair. The ASP gave out valuable information trying to save his life. You appeared immediately after the barrier was removed. How did you find out about this? The newly announced owner of the course continued to inquire. We are all connected to this place. My name is Haylock. My brother Kenbei and I were originally servants of the previous owner of this place, but he died 600 years ago. We trained for a long time to take his place, Kellogg said, almost choking on his own saliva. If they were servants, they should know this place. This means that they will still be useful to me because they also know where all the valuable things are. Puck thought about his benefit if he left them alive. I'm cleaning it up as promised. Now show me this place. Our hero fulfilled his promise and issued a decree, but you missed one. The dragon whined a little, offendedly, but immediately caught himself. Wait a second. I need to change the shape because it will be uncut. Have trouble from me, and immediate. Now instead of the dragon, a very handsome young man stood in front of Hanjul, chiseled cheekbones, turquoise, blue hair, violet eyes, and a well-built physical body. I'll introduce myself again. My name is K-Lock. He tried to establish relations with his new master, but he immediately shied from. Well, let's show it. After which he turned sharply on the heels of his boots and headed towards the main entrance of the building. The prisoner looked sadly at his brother imprisoned and chains, feeling sorry for him with all his heart and soul, that they were still lucky to be alive. Why are you digging around there? Should I push these sticks into you again? Puck was indignant, already going, including a second whine. A young man hurried towards him with a fox wrapped around his neck. Being a resident of modern human civilization, Hanjul could never have imagined that he would be the owner of such a beautiful palace. Exquisite design, amazing statues, decorated walls, floor, ceiling. The grandeur of the chambers left no one indifferent. It was clear that the builders and craftsmen, the devices and mechanisms that are in this palace are powered by the energy of the water core. Therefore, the owner of the kernel can easily manipulate them. While conducting the tour, Caliph simultaneously explained what and how. Despite its small size, this palace has existed since the Sango era, that is from the era before the Trinity. Until the last owner, no one was inferior to the Sea Dragon Kings. Yule was surprised fish were swimming outside, but there was no water inside. The yard looked quite spacious. He even spotted a place where he could move the peach tree and plant a garden. Well, Haylock led his master to the treasury of the pack to palace, the doors of which were sealed. Only the owner of the core can open this door, so the treasures remained untouched, the subordinate informed. Well, let's see what's inside, Puck suggested, and without waiting for an answer, he put his hand to the door, removing the seal. And then a huge doorway appeared in front of them, giving the guys the opportunity to pass through. It turned out to be much cleaner there than Hanjul had expected, walking past shelves and cabinets with various attributes and artifacts. His attention was finally caught by something worthwhile, or rather a shelving unit built into the wall. Nothing special on the shelves right next to each other, not allowing anyone else to squeeze in. There were books. Thanks to his aura, the young man felt that they were not like ordinary books. Driven by this thought, he went to the closet and pulled out one of them. Having opened it to the first page I came across, I tried to figure out what it was about, but I couldn't figure it out. What's this? The young man asked his guy. This is a martial art, Haylock answered, coming a little closer. Martial arts? Asked Jules. Yes. This is the White Sword King's technique, clarified the blue dragon in human form. If you think about it, creatures like you must train if they want to become dragons. The owner of the Pig to Palace continued to ask. It turned out that most are simply looking for a mentor to guide them. He as well as his younger brother Kanbei were mentored by the past Dragon King, but Master Bick died, so we were never able to become dragons. It was clear from Calic's eyes that death had taken not just a person, but an excellent mentor and a good ruler. The fact that the past Dragon King taught both of them his technique interested Hanjul. If everything this Muji said is true, then by mastering their technique, they will be able to become dragons. In this case, Puck will be able to use them, and he silently looked at the blue dragon standing in front of him who had once tried to kill him. Okay, I will give this technique to you. Hanjul made his decision public. What? At first Kalik even thought that I was pranking him, although usually they don't joke about such things. But in exchange for knowledge, he had to become public servant. I will do anything to get it. The blue dragon did not believe his luck, and right now he began to favor the new Dragon King to himself. Then I will immediately give you the first task. Our hero slammed the book shut with a whistle, and the first order that the blue dragon under the leadership of Hanjul had to carry out was to prepare for the meeting of guests. And he prepared for glory. The visiting man was now fairly enjoying his tea, snacking on Halo cookies, and sometimes in blissful pleasure. He stroked his braided gray beard. He was dressed in clothes of various colors. His cloak was red and blue on the reverse side. He had a bandage of the same art. Hanjul was surprised that the Lord of the Divine Fire came straight to his palace. At this time, the guest noticed to himself that this persimmon leaf tea had a very strong aroma. The young man continued to think, although he is at the magnificent level, the 6 out of 9 levels, A newly arrived man recognized him as the Dragon King. Interestingly, now you will doesn't need to address later you are respectfully. Finally, having drunk enough, the Lord of the Divine Fire decided to start a conversation. So the new Dragon King, who should be busy restoring the palace, wanted to see me for some reason. Having said this, he could not resist and filled his cup with tea again. Before starting to answer, you will pull out a tube of plant from the tomato. This is a pocket at the bottom of the kimono sleeve and began to finger it with his fingers. I have a request for you, and then looked into the guest's eyes. This is black Chinese bamboo. The man recognized the plant. I want you to make a flute out of it. Hanjul voiced his desire. Flute. The ambitions of the young Dragon King are very deep. The overlord's tone changed. His penetrating gaze studied the guy sitting in front of him completely and completely. I'm not going to use it. Puck shook his head from side to side, trying to lie as diligently as possible, but he clearly didn't succeed. Because the guest asked him not to worry, because he knows how to keep the secrets of his clients. With this remark, he seemed to show that he did not believe the young man's explanation, after which he switched to examining the bamboo canes. He admired its ideal size and assured that with such materials, he would definitely be able to make an excellent flute and would also try to put all his skill into it. At one glance, I understood all the value. He is truly an excellent master. I think it's worth asking him something. You will suggest it. If you allow me, I would like to ask one question. Deep down, the young man hoped that this man would help him with his problem. Yes, which one? The Lord was already prepared to listen to him. Instead, the young man again reached for the tomato. Only this time, instead of the bamboo, he began to pull out a sword from there. When he appeared before the guest in all his glory, the Dragon King threw him to the right side of the table. Thanks to Julius' mastery of martial arts, having performed several cool tricks with flips, the sword landed on the marble floor, stuck 20 centimeters into the depth of the stone. Watching the flight and landing of the sword, the Lord of Divine Fire jumped up from his seat. Looking at the attribute with all his eyes, Puck found the sword in the storage room. It seemed strange to him, and you will decided to watch it. Well, as soon as he touched it, he was overcome by an energy unprecedented until now. Somehow he managed to cope with it, but the aura that the sword radiates still confused him. In his life, he felt hatred many times, and at the moment when he took it, there was no anger or resentment in him. But as soon as he touched it, he was filled with the desire to cut someone to pieces to see their blood, flesh and death. It was pure intent to kill. The sword itself motivated the one. Puck was very sorry. He could have used it, but he did not have enough strength to master this weapon. After standing for a while, the man concluded that the sword that the young man had just pulled out was not from these lands. Before our hero even had time to blink, the guest grabbed the hilt of the sword and the aura gradually began to fill the man. The young man did not expect anything like this, but he immediately realized that this would not lead to good. Shouted to the man stop, so that he would stop, but it was already too late. The Lord of Divine Fire managed to tame the sword. Hanjul's respect for him increased more and more because he was unable to handle the weapon, even with all his strength. And now he had no doubt that the man standing in front of him, who had honored him by paying a visit, was a true master of his craft. This sword is a vile weapon forged by the dwarves of the Northwest. It can imbue the owner with enormous power, but if care is not taken, the sword will only bring death to its owner. After some time of silence, the master said, examining the little thing. He understood the essence of the question. If you are worried about the strength of the sword, you can repair it by making a new sheath. While it is in them, there will be no reason to worry. But as soon as it is taken out, the owner will fully experience all the lives that this sword took. He Conti. And finally he told him to remember that no matter how hard the owner tries, the sword will calm down only after tasting blood. The young man assured that he had not learned this lesson in vain. Well, I will visit you when everything is ready, promised the Lord of Divine Fire, after which they said goodbye to each other in good spirits. Calm prevailed at the bottom of the lake. The current like the wind slowly moved the tree branches and the sun's rays gently broke through the water surface. In general, in one word, there was peace to the point of whim. Tikanyan sat in the treasury at a table filled with books, alternately changing them in his hands. He was glad that he had settled in well and did not expect that the office would be so spacious. It was just a pity that Gwanak wasn't here. He could use some help. But whatever one may say, the place was still wonderful. He was even filled with memories of his student years when he was working on reports. In principle, While the flute is being prepared, no one should disturb him. But we can plan one thing, but life manages differently. That's what happened here to you. Kalik burst into the treasury office. Sir, a guest has come to you, the blue dragon said. But Hanjul did not expect anyone, and he himself began to wonder who decided to come to him. While still going down to the square, he noticed a man standing at the main entrance to the building. As soon as he approached him, the man asked, "Are you the new owner of the Picto Palace?" Then he introduced himself. "They call me Taebek Son, in the Sage of Mount Taebek, Paul Sunden." He was a man of advanced age, but gray had not yet crept into his raven hair and beard. His burgundy kimono was pale. Balsandon means 8 sacred halls. During the Goryeo dynasty, monk Myosi Chion founded 8 sacred temples. Each of them had its own deity to whom they brought gifts and prayed for the prosperity of the country. But in reality, everything was different. Celestials, who possessed amazing power, settled on 8 mountains, so the Goryeo authorities declared these mountains sacred and presented them with gifts. Soon they began to be called the sages of the 8 sacred mountains. Years and their holidays have passed, but now that the gates of heaven have reopened, the Korean government has restored the sages of Bolsondon to their status, and now the owner of the sanctuary of Mount Paektu appeared to Hanjul. In other words, the rightful owner of the entire Paektu mountain, whose name is Taebek Sonian, or as he is also called, the immortal Taebek. "Greetings, Mr. Taebek. I should have found you and greeted you first." Bowing, the young man greeted the guest. "It's okay. I was in Vario Castle and just returned." The owner of the sanctuary of Mount Paektu hastened to assure him, after which he stepped aside and pointed to the girl standing behind him. "And this child is my youngest student. Say hello." The teacher asked his followers to show banal etiquette. With her hands folded in a greeting, the young lady introduced herself. "Shin Soman, Mr. Taebek Jr. student expresses her respects to you." Barely containing his surprise, "You will squeezed out. Nice to meet you. I'll take you to the living room. Please come in." Even though he understood that he had come out to them wearing a mask, he still had the feeling that his identity was about to be revealed. Walking around the yard, the young man noticed that the atmosphere had changed greatly. After the girl's recovery, they began to call her TBX Fairy, and it was clear to the naked eye that the master showed favor to him. But what does he want? The guests followed him closely behind him. "By the way, what is your relationship with Onyo from Arthal?" Everyone knows that heaven and earth belong to her son, and asked out of nowhere. The question was thrown as if by chance, but it almost confused the young man. But he was not at a loss. "Although I received help from her, it was her personal initiative." The young man tried to answer the above question, but this information was not enough for the master. In addition to the fact that you have reached a magnificent level at such a young age, you have also visited the Gate of Grace, and you have a close relationship with the successor of the Grace of Arthal. I have never seen celestial beings who were able to achieve something like this in such a short period of time. Taebek expressed his admiration and immediately switched to his student. Her young age does not prevent her from having excellent talent. She had almost reached the heavenly level 5th out of 9. The master was charging the price of the girl, after which he turned to the young man, and in a slightly hushed voice asked him how he thought about giving his student a couple of instructions. For the second time in the last 4 minutes, Ewell did not know what to answer. The first time was when he was asked about his relationship with his older sister Guanako, and the second time now, while he was considering the guest's proposal. They had already gone into the living room, where they sat down at the table with a cup of tea. What you called pair training can be interpreted as training for building friendly relationships. Before finally agreeing or refusing, Pak decided to find out. That's right, by practicing together, you will be able to please each other. At these words, the master began to smile through his beard, and Shin, a little embarrassed, looked away to the side. And the old man continued as if nothing had happened. Who knows, maybe this girl will become your concubine. Now in the last 10 minutes, our hero has experienced a third shock. It's somehow strange in his life. He doesn't ask anyone to marry, but someone is always striving to become his soulmate. Taebek decided to finally finish off the Dragon King. Yes, this is the whole essence of pair training. Here we mean a couple, not two people, but a man and a woman in a relationship. Taoist sexual practices are truly a mysterious thing. Properly released Cha energy can lead to harmony between the masculine and feminine principles. This is the only way to reach the highest path in the shortest possible time. Having finished his tirade, he fell silent, waiting for the young man's deck. You will guess that using Shinzen, the master was trying to tame him the dragon. Sorry, senior, I don't intend to enter into such a relationship. Park made his verdict. Don't rush into a decision. Care practice will help you a lot soon, and tried to convince him otherwise. Besides, you can become my son-in-law, and I'm not one of those who treats their sons badly. After these words, he decided to take out his main trump card and placed a small sealed vessel on the marble table. With the appearance of this little thing on the table, Hanjul was enveloped from head to toe by a familiar feeling. Another moment, and it dawned on him that the gunching extract had been placed right in front of him. But it was thanks to him that the young man managed to hide his foundation. After all this time, he still failed to find something similar with the elixir. The rarer the elixir is, the more valuable it is to be guessed right, and actually found Manuel's weak point, in a sense. But the young man decided to use his last opportunity, where he mentioned that he was already engaged to another and intended to marry her. Here he meant Sodom, the leader of the goblin tribe. How difficult it is with you. This practice has nothing to do with feelings. The master did not lose hope. It doesn't matter whether you have a spouse or not. If you pay attention to each other, then there is nothing wrong with that. Besides, you're a dragon. How are you going to remain celibate? Sonin discussed this topic. The young man looked at the girl. At some point, looking into her eyes, it seemed to him that she was hoping for his refusal. Well, okay. With all due respect to Shin Salmon, I agreed to do Paris practice with her. The king of dragons agreed to a compromise. However, he planned to benefit as much as he could. A few days later, in the office of Heaven and Earth, Yule was practicing as always. There was a feeling that some kind of light storm was raging in the office. Finally, a small cloud appeared between the young man's hands. Another second, and heavy drops of rain began to pour from the cloud. Park praised himself for his diligence and also appreciated his work. After all, he tried for a long time and was finally rewarded for his work. Now that he understands the principle, he can cause rain using the energy of the air. When he reaches the 6th stage, he will be able to combine different properties and create natural disasters, like Hylock and Convi, who created hail and lightning at their first meeting. It was a lot of fun, so the young man couldn't wait to reach the excellent level. Then a blue dragon came to his office. Young master, Madam would like to join you in the bedroom, he announced. This news please talk great. It's time for me to use the immortal Taebek, thought the young man. Let him come in, and conveyed his order to Hylock. Meanwhile, Shin collected her thoughts and tried to put on a mask of calm. In order to concentrate on what was happening, she remembered the words of her mentor. After all, an ancient dragon, this is an amazing opportunity to become part of the family of the Dragon King. You understand what this means, right? If you put in the effort, you can get a dragon. Everything that belongs to you is mine. I believe in you. You will succeed. Taebek encouraged the girl. That's right. It's all for the sake of the teacher. It's all for him. The girl tried to strengthen her spirit herself. Plucking up courage, she pulled the door handle towards herself, and immediately from the threshold she said, I apologize for the trouble, young master. But then she stopped short. The whole bedroom was wrapped in the aroma of incense. There was a slightly romantic atmosphere in the room, and Hanjul himself lay down on the bed, taking a seductive pose. At the top of his kimono was unbuttoned. Fanning himself with a fan, he casually asked, have you come? I think the atmosphere should be something like this. So I embellish everything here a little. What do you say? The young man continued to confuse the young lady, clearly brought up in good society.